Chapter 1635. Tea serum. Are you sure it's not a virus? Meg raised his eyebrows. He was surprised by the system again. He didn't expect the roasted pig's eyes to be able to treat eye diseases. Moreover, it had such an effect because the wild boar had been roasted beside an active volcano for a long time. What was even better was that the effect was even better after being heated and roasted. Wasn't this made for roasting? The system didn't say anything else, but Meg at least confirmed one thing. The roasted pig's eyes did have the effect of treating eye diseases. In that case, he might be able to add a plaque on his door saying, "Holy Doctor of Ophthalmology," in the future. "Mr. Mac, are you not sure yourself?" Christopher looked at Meg and asked, a little worried. Many customers also looked at Meg. Not everyone had eye diseases, but older family members and friends would more or less be unable to see clearly. If the roasted pig's eyes were really effective, then of course, they would bring them here to try it. "I'm a chef. Whether a dish has other effects depends on the person. I won't charge extra for it, and I can't guarantee the effect. If a dish can bring other benefits to the customer besides being delicious, I'll also feel happy," Meg said with a smile. It was a very formal reply, but it was indeed Meg's thoughts. Even if tofu pudding with beautifying effects was sold for 5,000 copper coins, there would still be countless rich women lining up to buy it. But it jumps over the wall with anti-hair loss and hair growth effects was sold for 100,000 copper coins, and there would be no lack of customers. Hair transplant costs more than that. However, Meg didn't want to make money. He always felt that he was a chef, and making the dishes delicious was what he should do. As for the special effects, they were given by the ingredients provided by the system. However, they were already included in the cost of the ingredients. He could only earn that much. So, can it be treated or not? Christopher frowned. He felt that Mr. Mac's words seemed to be an answer, but also seemed to be a non-answer. "Please come in. He can try it." Meg looked at the young man with a smile. He was at such a beautiful age. His vision shouldn't be black. Furthermore, the young girl beside him was not in a good condition either. Long-term malnutrition had caused her various physical indicators to light up in red. If she did not improve, it was likely that she would collapse easily. "All right." Christopher brought Lucy and Darren into the restaurant, and found a seat. After welcoming the guests, Meg turned around and walked towards the kitchen. "Boss, can roasted pig's eyes really cure that young man's eyes?" "It seems to be quite serious," Mia whispered to Meg with a pitiful look on her face. "I can't guarantee that. We'll have to wait until he eats it." Meg shook his head. The system only said that it could effectively treat a variety of eye diseases, but it didn't say whether it could treat viral cataracts or whether it had an effect on the boy's eyes. "Take the customer's order." "The busy business hours have begun again," Meg said with a smile as he walked into the kitchen. "Okay," Mia replied as she turned around and walked towards the table where Julian and Crassus were sitting. "What a beautiful restaurant." Lucy sat down opposite Christopher with Darren. She looked around carefully, and her eyes shone brightly. This was the most beautiful restaurant she had ever seen in her life. "Sister, are we in the restaurant now?" Darren asked softly as he leaned closer to Lucy. Although he didn't say a word just now, he was listening attentively. However, he still didn't understand why he was in the restaurant for his treatment, and what was roasted pig's eyes. Was it roasting pig's eyes? Darren suddenly lost his sight when he was 8 years old. Before that, he would often go hunting with his grandfather. His grandfather was the best hunter in the village. He could shoot a wild boar's eye with an arrow. The wild boar that was shot would usually fall after running for a long distance. Even the villagers wouldn't eat the wild boar's eyes. "Yes, Mr. Christopher brought us to a very beautiful restaurant." It's like. Lucy pondered seriously for a while. She had never seen such a beautiful restaurant in her and Darren's world. She couldn't help but feel a little anxious. It's like a starry sky without clouds in summer. It's sparkling and comfortable, Christopher said with a smile. Starry sky. A smile appeared at the corner of Darren's mouth. The most beautiful image in the depths of his mind was the clear starry sky. His grandfather had said that one of the stars shining in the dark sky was him. He would always be watching them from the sky. What would you like to order? Yabamiya walked to the left, and asked with a smile. I'd like 10 skewers of roasted pig's eyes, and 2 plates of Yangzhou fried rice. The 2 children should be hungry. Christopher flipped open the menu, and glanced at the old scar between Lucy's brows. He said, and 2 plates of sweet tofu pudding, 1 plate of husband and wife long slice, and a glass of rum. All right, please wait a moment. Mia nodded slightly, and walked to the next table. What is husband and wife long slice? Darren asked Lucy softly, feeling a little scared. I don't know, either. Lucy shook her head. It sounded very scary. Could the owner of this restaurant be a strange person? Roasted pig's eyes, and now husband and wife long slice. Seeing that the 2 children were a little scared, Christopher explained with a smile that husband and wife long slice is actually made from various parts of a cow. Mr. Mack is an interesting person, so he gave it an interesting name. The 2 were enlightened when they heard that. Wild cows were wild animals that were not easy to hunt, but they could be eaten for a long time every time they caught one. Ever since their grandfather passed away, they hadn't eaten beef. When they heard about beef, their eyes shone. Let Darren eat a few skewers of roasted pig's eyes later. It might be effective for his eyes, Christopher said with a smile. Okay. Lucy nodded. Although roasted pig's eyes sounded a little scary, as long as it was effective for Darren's eyes, they had to give it a try. Darren pursed his lips slightly, but didn't say anything. Your Yangzhou fried rice. Not long after, Mia placed 2 plates of Yangzhou fried rice in front of Darren and Lucy. Wow! Lucy's eyes lit up. Fresh green onions were sprinkled on the colorful fried rice, and the fragrance of eggs mixed with a rich and refreshing aroma assailed her nostrils. The bowl of fried rice, which had both color and smell, looked as if it had been fried out of the rainbow in the sky. It was beautiful and tempting. It smells so good. Darren's nose twitched, and he couldn't help but lean forward. The fragrance wafted over. It was a fragrance that he had never smelled before, and he couldn't help but swallow his saliva. He really wanted to see with his own eyes what was in front of him and why it was emitting such an alluring fragrance. This is for you. Darren and I can have one. Lucy quickly returned to her senses. She pushed her plate of fried rice in front of Christopher, and picked up the spoon to feed Darren. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 1636. I ordered this especially for you guys. You guys probably didn't have a proper meal today, so I ordered something else for myself too. Christopher pushed the fried rice back to Lucy, and looked at her with pity. This little girl was too sensible. Judging from how skinny she was, she definitely hadn't eaten her fill for a long time. Thank you, Lucy said gratefully. Lucy looked at Christopher, and thanked him gratefully. She scooped up a spoonful of fried rice, and fed it to Darren as she said, Darren, open your mouth. This fried rice is as colorful as a rainbow. Rainbow. Darren's eyes lit up, and he opened his mouth expectantly. As the slightly hot fried rice entered his mouth, the wonderful taste was enveloped by the heat and blossomed in his mouth. As he chewed it carefully, the texture of the rice and the various ingredients was so delicate. All kinds of flavors melted in his mouth, just like a colorful flower blooming in his mouth, making him pleasantly surprised and immersed in it. These are eggs, Darren could only discern the aroma of the eggs. Even the rice had an unfamiliar yet exceptionally sweet taste to it. The wonderful taste lingered in his mouth for a long time, and after swallowing, he felt warm and comfortable all over. "Is it good?" Lucy asked expectantly as she looked at Darren, whose eyes were narrowed in bliss. It's really delicious." Darren nodded, and grabbed Lucy's hand. "Big sister, try it too. It's really delicious." "It's all right. I'll eat later. I'll feed you first." Lucy scooped another spoonful of fried rice for Darren with a smile. She hadn't seen such a smile on Darren's face for a long time, ever since her grandfather passed away. It seemed like he really liked this fried rice. Children at this age should be studying in chaos school. They shouldn't have to suffer like this, Christopher thought to himself as he looked at the pair of siblings opposite him. Lucy finished feeding Darren a plate of Yangzhou fried rice. After he expressed that he was full, she picked up her spoon and started eating. When the warm fried rice entered her mouth, a mist rose in front of her eyes. What a wonderful taste! It was just like her mother's cooking back then. The wild mushrooms in the mountains were fried with wild boar oil, and there was even some diced bacon occasionally. However, after so many years, his mother's appearance had gradually become blurry. That day, she and her father went hunting in the forest as usual, but they never came back. Back then, she was only 5 years old, and Darren had just learned how to walk. When she was young, her grandfather always said that they would come back with big game in the future. However, when her grandfather passed away and she gradually grew up, she already knew that they might never come back. In this world, she only had Darren as her younger brother. After silently finishing a plate of Yangzhou fried rice, Lucy's eyes were a little wet. She tilted her head and looked at Darren. If his eyes couldn't be cured, she would take care of him for the rest of his life. "Your roasted pig's eyes, sliced beef and ox tongue in chili sauce, and rum." Mia walked over with a tray and placed 2 plates and a glass of rum down gently. "Is this roasted pig's eyes?" Lucy's gaze was quickly attracted by the small mountain of meat skewers on the plate. The pig's eyes that were skewered together and roasted to a brown color were surprisingly not too scary. The surface of the skewers glowed with oil, and they emitted a tempting barbecued meat aroma. Roasted pig's eyes. Darren shrunk his neck. Although this thing might be able to cure his eyes, he was still a little afraid subconsciously. Those wild boars whose eyeballs were pierced by his grandfather had already started to appear in his mind. The scene was a little scary. Yes, this is roasted pig's eyes. Although it sounds a little scary, this is a very delicious dish. Furthermore, my eyes became better after eating this. Christopher nodded with a smile. However, this roasted pig's eyes has just been roasted, so it's very hot inside. You have to wait for a while before eating. Lucy nodded and looked at the roasted pig's eyes expectantly. Although they couldn't guarantee that Darren would recover after eating the roasted pig's eyes, at least this was the first time someone had given them a clear solution since they came to Chaos City. Christopher took a sip of rum, and looked at the roasted pig's eyes expectantly as well. Everyone knew that he was the old accountant of Abbott's jewelry shop, but very few people knew that he actually owned 10% of the jewelry shop's shares. He wasn't short of money for a very long time, but some things couldn't be measured by money. For example, the 15-year-old rum brewed by Master Old Sim, or the simple effort of helping a blind child see the light again. Such happiness could not be compared with the 1 million pieces of jewelry sold in the jewelry shop in a day. About 3 minutes later, Christopher picked up a skewer of roasted pig's eyes, and bit into one first. He tested it carefully with his teeth and tongue, and only bit into it after making sure that it was a temperature that his mouth could withstand. The warm liquid exploded in his mouth, and a wonderful feeling blossomed. His anticipation and anxiety were released at this moment, and it was a delightful feeling. Christopher swallowed the roasted pig's eye in his mouth, and smiled at Lucy. "Come, let your brother have a taste of the game that he can't taste anywhere else. But you must be careful when you eat. Close your mouth when you bite the eyeball, and don't let the precious liquid spill out." Lucy picked up a skewer of roasted pig's eyes, and passed it to Darren as she said, "Darren, open your mouth. Bite the first roasted pig's eye like how you eat candied haws in the morning." Darren answered, and opened his mouth obediently. He waited for Lucy to feed the pig's eye into his mouth before closing his mouth, and removing the pig's eye from the skewer. When the roasted pig's eye entered his mouth, what surprised Darren wasn't the slippery and sticky texture. Instead, it tasted like roasted meat. The skin was slightly charred, but when he touched it with his teeth, it felt like a bulging fish bubble. It was very elastic. "Yes, hold it in your mouth, and then try to bite it open gently with your teeth. Remember, don't use too much force. Otherwise, you won't be able to control your mouth, and you won't be able to keep all the liquid in your mouth," Christopher reminded. Upon hearing that, Darren tried to bite the pig's eye with his teeth. However, the skin of the pig's eye was tough and elastic. It was like a mischievous little fellow scurrying around in his mouth. He was a little afraid that the eyeball would explode in his mouth, but he was also a little excited to see what it would feel like after it exploded. Would it really allow his eyes to see again? Amidst his anxiety and anticipation, the mischievous pig's eye was finally caught by his teeth, and was bitten open. Pfff, the sound of the eyeball exploding rang out clearly in his mind. It made his soul tremble. However, before he could think about it carefully, the slightly hot liquid had already splattered around in his mouth. If not for Christopher's repeated reminders, he definitely wouldn't have been able to close his mouth in time. The slightly sticky and delicious soup grabbed all his attention. It was a little like bone soup, but it was countless times thicker and tastier than the bone soup he had tasted before. It stimulated his taste buds and brought him an incomparable pleasure. He felt as if his mind had been emptied out. His anxiety and anticipation received the most perfect feedback at this moment. After swallowing the liquid, he started to chew on the remaining things. Within the tough skin of the eyeball, there was something that was as crispy as bone. The more he chewed, the more fragrant the skin became. It also made him feel happy. Furthermore, what made Darren even more surprised was that a refreshing coolness gathered towards his eyes. His eyes that were shrouded in darkness actually showed signs of breaking through. "Big Sister Anna, do you think that Big Brother's eyes will become better?" Amy sat behind the counter with Ugly Duckling in her arms as she looked in Darren's direction. "I think so. Uncle Meg is super awesome." Anna nodded with certainty. I think so too." Chapter 1637. "How is it? Darren, do you feel anything?" Lucy asked as she looked at Darren expectantly. She felt as if her heart had leaped into her throat. Christopher was also staring at Darren. Although he didn't expect much from Darren, who had just eaten a roasted pig's eye, he still wanted to know if there was any obvious effect. Darren tried to feel it seriously, and shook his head. I feel a cooling sensation in my eyes, but I still can't see." "You still can't see?" Lucy was slightly disappointed. "Don't be anxious. You just ate one. Come, eat the remaining 9 skewers." "My eyes only recovered after I went home to sleep. No matter how good the medicine is, it still needs time to take effect," Christopher said with a smile. "Also, there's a cooling sensation in your eyes, which means that the roasted pig's eyes are working." After this meal, let's have another meal tonight. Lucy and Darren nodded at the same time with smiles on their faces. Lucy carefully fed the remaining roasted pig's eyes to Darren. With the experience from the first one, Darren caught the pig's eye very quickly, and chewed on it happily. Is it really that delicious? Lucy looked on doubtfully from the side. She could clearly hear the sound of the eyeball being crushed by Darren. She could even imagine the terrifying scene of the liquid splattering everywhere in his mouth. However, Darren looked as if he was enjoying the process very much. Not long after, Darren finished all 9 skewers of roasted pig's eyes. Burp. Darren burped. After eating a plate of Yangzhou fried rice and so many roasted pig's eyes, he felt a little bloated. What surprised him was that wisps of coldness gathered in his eyes, as if countless rays of light were trying to pierce through the layers of darkness. His vision, which was originally as dark as ink, seemed to have an additional layer of faintly discernible white. However, the intertwining of black and white was like a whirlpool, making him feel a little dizzy. His eyes started to want to close subconsciously. He felt like he could fall asleep immediately if he was given a bed. Darren, are you all right? Lucy asked concernedly when she noticed Darren's abnormality. Sister, I'm fine. I just feel very sleepy. I want to sleep. Darren shook his head and yawned as he fell sideways towards Lucy. Darren? Darren! Lucy hurriedly reached out to support Darren as she called out in a panic. He's fine. He's just asleep. Just bring him back to sleep until he wakes up. Elizabeth happened to walk to the side, and reached out to tap Darren's forehead gently as she looked at Lucy. But he... Lucy still couldn't understand why Darren would suddenly fall asleep, as if he had fainted. Don't worry. The roasted pig's eyes must have taken effect. Look at how soundly he's sleeping. His breathing is even. He doesn't look like there's any problem at all. He finished the rest of the rum in his hand, and got up to help Lucy carry Darren. As they walked towards the door, he said, "Let's go back to my house first and let this child have a good sleep. Then I'll have to trouble you." Lucy said gratefully. She carried most of Darren's weight on her shoulders and slowly walked towards the door. After they got into the horse-drawn carriage, Lucy laid Darren flat on the seat. She listened to his soft snoring, and it was indeed no different from when he was sleeping normally. Only then did she feel relieved. She looked at Christopher, who was sitting at the side, and asked, "Old sir, will Darren's eyes recover after he wakes up?" "I can't guarantee it now, but judging from his reaction, the roasted pig's eyes should still be effective." Christopher shook his head as he looked at Darren, who was sleeping peacefully. He also hoped that this young boy's eyes would be able to see again after he woke up. "Oh, yes. Old sir, I'll give you the money for our meal and the roasted pig's eyes now." Lucy took out a money pouch that was sewn from rags, and poured out a pile of coins. Most of them were copper coins, with over 10 silver coins and 2 gold coins mixed in. "This is the money that the villagers gathered for Darren's treatment. I don't know if it's enough. If it's not enough, I will find a job in Chaos City in the next few days, and work to return the money to you." Lucy held all the coins with both hands, and looked at Christopher with clear eyes. Christopher looked at Lucy's clear eyes. This should be the first time this young lady left the village to bring her younger brother to Chaos City. After pondering for a while, he took a gold coin and a copper coin from Lucy's hands, and smilingly said, "These are enough." "That's all." Lucy was a little uncertain. She couldn't read, so she didn't know what was written on the menu. She didn't need to use money in the village, so she didn't have much of a concept of money. However, she could tell that this restaurant definitely cost a lot. "Yes." Christopher nodded. "Thank you." Lucy put the rest of the money back into the money pouch, and kept it carefully with her. These were all gathered by the villagers, so she had to return them when she got back. Along the way, Christopher asked about Lucy and Darren briefly, and found out that the two children had already become orphans. He couldn't help but pity them even more. The horse-drawn carriage stopped, and Christopher stood up. "Let's alight. We've reached my house. Bring Darren to have a rest. You should have a good rest too." The coachman helped Darren off the carriage, and the butler brought them straight to the guest room. In the luxurious manor, there were rows upon rows of buildings. Lucy followed behind the butler, and scanned her surroundings carefully. She didn't expect Mr. Christopher's house to be so spacious. There were even more houses than in the village. "I heard from them that you brought two children home. What's the matter?" the old lady asked as soon as Christopher entered the room. She came forward to greet him. Christopher pulled the old mistress into the house, and said, "I met two poor children on my way back from the goldsmith's shop this morning. It's really not easy at such a young age." The old mistress couldn't help but sigh after hearing Christopher's words. She wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes, and was about to stand up. "I'll go take a look at those two children. Let them rest first. They probably didn't have much rest on the way here." Christopher pulled her back, and shook his head with a smile. "However, I'm afraid Dorothy won't be happy if you let that little girl wear her clothes. You know her temper," the old mistress said worriedly. "That temper of hers is all because of you too. I'm still the one in charge in this family now. No matter which generation it is, they have to be educated. Otherwise, even if they have some money, they won't last long," Christopher said with a straight face. The old mistress didn't dare to say anything else. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 1638. Lucy had fallen asleep beside Darren's bed. Although her position wasn't very comfortable, lying on the warm and comfortable blanket was still the best sleep she had in the past few days. Even her shoulder that had been scratched by the vines seemed to have recovered quite a bit, and the pain had mostly disappeared. "Sister! Sister!" Lucy heard Darren's voice while she was in a daze. "Darren!" Lucy looked up immediately and met Darren's eyes. Most of the white in Darren's deathly white eyes had actually disappeared, and they regained some of their black color and clarity. His expression was also one of surprise and surprise. I can see you. I can see sister," Darren said in surprise as tears glistened in his eyes. Although his vision was still a little blurry, the heavy black fog had already disappeared, and only a thin layer of fog was left. However, he could already see Lucy, who was close to the bed. It was a little blurry, but at least he could see her clearly. "Really? You can really see me? Darren, is what you said true?" Lucy stood up immediately and grabbed Darren's shoulders agitatedly. I can see sister. Sister has become prettier," Darren said with a nod as a smile appeared on his face. "That's great, that's really great." Lucy hugged Darren tightly as her tears fell uncontrollably. She sobbed, "If Grandpa knew, he would definitely be very happy. He will know. Grandpa said that he has become a star." "I will tell him tonight," Darren said with a choked voice. The siblings hugged each other and cried. Knock, knock. There was a knock on the door, followed by Christopher's voice. "Are you awake? We are going out to eat. It's Mr. Christopher." Lucy hurriedly wiped the tears off her face, and then looked at Darren seriously. "We must thank Mr. Christopher and the owner of that restaurant properly later. They were the ones who cured your eyes." Darren nodded obediently. "Let's go out." Lucy stood up from the bed and watched as Darren put on his clothes. He got off the bed clumsily and put on his shoes. She then held his hand and walked towards the door. "Grandpa, Did you really give my custom-made clothes and shoes to someone else? Beside Christopher, a young girl draped in a white mink fur cloak asked with a frown, clearly a little unhappy. Dorothy, I've already told you that I've given the clothes and shoes to those who need them. It's my fault for not discussing this with you. I'll get the tailor to make another set for you, but if you don't behave properly later, you'll only be able to wear old clothes next year. Christopher looked at the young lady beside him. You should know that this lady very graciously rejected your cloak. This is my favorite mink cloak. I've been looking forward to it for a whole year. It seems that the lady is not bad. Dorothy raised her brow when she heard that. Her wardrobe was almost full of normal clothes and shoes, and that old-fashioned tailor would make the same clothes and shoes every year. She didn't even have to guess to know that it would be a bright red dress and bright red shoes. Actually, she had been eyeing Suede's new products recently. She had already used her pocket money to order the latest down jacket. It was a handsome black down jacket, and it would arrive in 3 days. This was her first time snatching Suede's new products. She was simply too blissful. Hence, when Grandpa said that he had given her custom-made clothes to someone else, she was only a little unhappy that her things were disposed of without her consent, but she didn't feel too bad. On the contrary, if the other party was really someone who needed it, she actually didn't mind giving the clothes and shoes that she didn't really like to them. Grandpa said that they were a pair of siblings who came to Chaos City from a remote mountain village to seek treatment. It did sound quite pitiful. The door opened very quickly. Lucy walked out holding Darren's hand. Dorothy looked at Lucy. She was wearing a bright red and green dress, and a pair of red leather boots. They fit her rather well, just as she had expected. The girl should be about the same age as her. She had delicate features, but looked very frail. Her face was pale, and her lips were a little pale. Her bluish-yellow hair was tied messily behind her head, and her bright eyes seemed to be a little red from crying just now. Just one look was all it took for Dorothy's unhappiness to disappear completely. This girl did look like she really needed help. It was just a set of clothes and a pair of shoes. Moreover, she even gave her the cloak. Dorothy started to like Lucy a lot more. Lucy also noticed Dorothy, who was standing beside Christopher. They were about the same age, so she should be the granddaughter that Mr. Christopher was talking about. Dorothy was very beautiful. She had a head of soft golden hair, snow-white skin, and a slender neck. She was as noble and elegant as a white swan. She was wearing a blue dress, and the white cloak she was wearing looked a little familiar. It seemed to be the one that Mr. Christopher wanted to give her this afternoon. Should the clothes and shoes I'm wearing belong to her? Lucy suddenly felt a little embarrassed. It was as if she had snatched someone else's beloved things. She couldn't wait to take off the clothes and return them to her. Wow, look at Darren's eyes. The white color has faded a lot. Can you see things now? Christopher asked excitedly. I can see things that are close to me now. Darren nodded, and bowed deeply to Christopher. He looked up at him, and gratefully said, "Thank you, Mr. Christopher. You're welcome. It's great to be able to help you." Christopher helped Darren up and smilingly said, "It seems like the roasted pig's eyes are very effective for your eyes. Let's set off now. We'll eat 10 more skewers of roasted pig's eyes tonight. Maybe your eyes will be completely healed tomorrow morning." "Thank you so much." Lucy also looked at Christopher gratefully. "You're welcome." Christopher waved his hand and smilingly introduced, "I forgot to introduce her to you. This is my granddaughter, Dorothy. She's the same age as you, Lucy. The 4 of us will go to Amy's for dinner tonight. Hello, I'm Dorothy." Dorothy went forward and greeted them with a smile. "Hello, I'm Lucy," Lucy said shyly. She grabbed the hem of her dress nervously. After hesitating for a while, she mustered her courage and said, "I'll return the clothes to you as soon as possible. I'll wash my clothes immediately, and then, oh, that's okay. I think it looks better on you than on me." Dorothy smiled at Lucy and extended her hand. "Let's be friends. In that case, you can wear my clothes, and I can wear yours." Lucy looked at Dorothy's hand, and then at the clean and gentle smile on her face. She hesitated for a while, but still extended her hand. "Let's go. I'll get you a coat. It's a little cold to only wear a dress." Dorothy grabbed Lucy's hand and walked out. This child. Christopher looked at Dorothy's back view and shook his head with a smile. He also held Darren's little hand and said, "Let's go. We'll wait for them in the carriage." Bookhouse Reading Website. Chapter 1639. Jason, I specially asked 2 customers to postpone their treatment until tomorrow. Tell me, what's so urgent that you're looking for me for? Adolphus asked the middle-aged man with a full beard sitting opposite him in the horse-drawn carriage. Jason sighed and softly said, "Yes, our Dr. Adolphus is the best ophthalmologist in Chaos City. He's a super busy man. Even if this good brother of mine wants to ask you out for a drink, he has to inform you half a month in advance, and he has to undergo a strict interrogation once he gets in the carriage." "You're just looking for me for a drink?" Adolphus frowned. "Why didn't you say so earlier? I'll come out with you after I see those 2 patients. The last 2 patients' conditions are not urgent at all. I've already asked around for you. It's fine to come back tomorrow." Jason waved his hand nonchalantly and said, "However, if we're late, we won't be able to have a drink. Are there any pubs that won't let you in?" Adolphus was in disbelief. He knew that this brother of his who grew up with him came from a wealthy family. He often spent a lot of money in pubs, and was the boss' favorite customer. Jason chuckled and said, "Don't doubt me. If we're late, they really won't let you in. However, it's not that they won't let you in. It's just that there are too many people in front of you, and you won't even get your turn. There's still such a popular pub in Chaos City. Look, your sister-in-law is always taking care of you. She even arranges your meals clearly. You don't know anything about it." Jason looked at Adolphus with disdain. "It's not a pub. It's a restaurant, Mamie's. It's the most popular and reputable restaurant in Chaos City now. You haven't heard of it, right? Mamie's? Never heard of it." Adolphus shook his head. He then looked at Jason suspiciously and said, "But, didn't you say that those who drink in restaurants are fools, and that they can only enjoy themselves in pubs?" "Ahem, that's what I said when I was young and frivolous. Who knew that there would be a restaurant like Mamie's in this world?" Jason coughed dryly to cover up his embarrassment, and then said, "You don't know how delicious Mr. Mac's food is. That spicy grilled fish is the best dish to go with wine, and the beef kebab is also invincible. Of course, the best thing about them is their beer. It's cold and refreshing, and it makes all the pubs in Chaos City look like trash. Not to mention the 15-year-old rum that their family recently launched. Do you know who made it? Old Sim, the father of rum. Oh my God, 1 cup only costs 1,000 copper coins. Drinking 1 cup is 1 cup less. A 15-year-old rum brewed by Old Sim." Adolphus's eyes lit up when he heard that. Jason had bought a bottle of Old Sim's 3-year-old rum at an auction 2 years ago at a high price, and he brought it to his place to drink. He still couldn't forget the taste until now. He didn't expect there to be a restaurant selling a 15-year-old rum. It was simply unimaginable. Yes. I don't know where Mr. Mac got it from. Ever since Old Sim passed away, it's not easy to find this kind of rum, even in the Falk tribe. Jason nodded. He was also puzzled. Seems like the owner of this restaurant is not simple, Adolphus said thoughtfully. He's definitely not simple. Mr. Mac is simply a god. Not only is his food delicious, but he also knows how to treat illnesses. Oh, he's a doctor. Adolphus was shocked. You can't really call him a doctor, but according to what I heard, a woman's skin would become smooth and tender after eating his tofu pudding. It also has a very good scar-removing effect. Even some of the old mercenaries, after eating tofu pudding for half a month, their old scars had all disappeared, and their skin had become white and tender. In order not to be laughed at by the newbies, some people even started to draw scars on themselves recently. 2 days ago, I even overheard a few mercenaries at the next table exchanging their experiences while eating tofu pudding, Jason said with a chuckle. There's such a thing. Adolphus frowned. It sounded like a scammer on the streets who found actors to scam people. As a doctor, he hated such people the most. Not only did they cheat the patients of their money, but they also delayed the patient's treatment time. Not only does it whiten and beautify the skin, Mimi's also has a magical soup. Buddha jumps over the wall. As long as you drink that soup, even if you're bald for life, you can still grow hair back. One serving only costs 10,000 copper coins. Jason was talking excitedly. He suddenly slapped his head as he looked at Adolphus and said, "Oh yes, Mr. Mac just launched a new dish yesterday, roasted pig's eyes. This afternoon, a few customers said that their eye diseases were cured after eating it. This afternoon, an old man even brought a young boy with an eye disease here to eat it. I wonder if it's effective. If it's really effective, I'm afraid Mr. Mac will start to snatch your business." Adolphus' eyes widened when he heard that, and he raised his voice as he said, "Are you talking about a 10-year-old boy who has an older sister who is 12 or 13 years old? How did you know? They came to look for you." Jason was a little surprised. That boy's eye disease is very strange and it's very serious, so I didn't dare to treat him carelessly. I could only ask them to find someone else, Adolphus said with a sullen face. But I didn't expect that old man to bring them to the restaurant to treat their illness. It's really ridiculous. Such a scam could ruin a child's eyes and future. It's not as serious as you say, right? Mr. Mac is a good person. He wouldn't do something like scam. When Jason saw Adolphus' serious expression, he stopped laughing and said uncertainly, "You're not thinking of creating trouble, are you? If he uses the gimmick of delicacies to deceive patients, I'll definitely destroy this restaurant." Adolphus said with a firm expression. "Good boy, this is a restaurant that even the Castellan occasionally visits. How can it be a scam? You have to calm down." Jason was a little uneasy. If he can even deceive a blind child, even if the Castellan supports him, it can't hide his nature as a scammer. Adolphus looked at Jason, and his tone was a little calmer. "Don't worry, I'm not one of those hotheads. I'll act according to the situation." "That's good. But let me remind you first. These so-called curative effects were discovered by the customers by accident. Mr. Mac has never, and completely doesn't need to, use this as a selling point of the restaurant. He also didn't increase the price because of this. We're here to drink 15-year-old rum today. Remember that, okay?" Jason reminded him with a serious face. "Okay." Adolphus responded casually. He was already determined in his heart that if he met that boy again later, he must take him away. He thought about it for the whole day, and perhaps there were a few ways to try. Even if it couldn't completely restore his vision, it could at least control the deteriorating condition of his eyes. No pop-up window. Chapter 1640. Jason and the rest were not late, but there was still a long line in front of Amy's. "How is it? I didn't lie to you, did I?" Amy's has such a long line every day. If you're late, you won't be able to eat it. Jason jumped off the horse-drawn carriage and smiled at the surprised Adolphus. These are all people here to see the doctor. Adolphus was indeed very surprised. Was the scale of this restaurant scam already so exaggerated? And it was right under the eyes of the city lord's castle and right next to the Bowtie prison. What are you thinking? Of course, they're all here to eat. Jason didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He suddenly regretted talking too much on the way here. He urged, "Let's go. Let's hurry to the back of the line. According to the current number of people, we won't be able to eat the tofu pudding, so we don't have to worry about which flavor to eat." Adolphus followed Jason to the back of the line while sizing up the guests in the line. Humans, elves, demons, orcs. Almost every race could be seen, which made him feel even more depressed. It seemed that the humans were not the only ones who had fallen into the trap. However, what surprised him was that the mental state of these customers seemed to be the same as those gloomy patients he usually saw. As an old doctor who had been practicing medicine for more than 30 years, he boasted that he could tell a person's physical condition from their mental state. Overall, these people did not seem like regular patients. Furthermore, judging from their clothes, many of them should be considered as the upper class of Chaos City. They were not cheap, so how could they be deceived by such low-level means? Could it be that what Jason said was true? However, when he walked past them, he heard that those people seemed to be divided into two factions, arguing over whether the sweet tofu pudding was better or the savory tofu pudding was better. He was even more certain that this was a scam restaurant. This boss even brainwashed these customers. This is too much, too scary. Standing in the line, Adolphus looked left and right with a heavy heart, but he still couldn't find the siblings. He didn't know if they had realized that they had been scammed. Not long after, the restaurant's door opened, and a young man with a light mustache stood at the door with a group of beautiful waitresses to welcome the customers into the restaurant. This is the boss. He looks very young. He doesn't look like an old chef, nor does he look like an old doctor. How can he be so good at both? Adolphus looked at Meg, feeling more and more confused. However, this young boss seemed to have a good relationship with the customers. He was able to call out the names of most of the customers and greet them familiarly. He was kind and amiable throughout the whole process, which made people have a good impression of him. "Mr. Mack, is there still a rum bar today?" Jason looked at Meg with a familiar smile. "We don't have much left. Drink and cherish it." Meg laughed. He wasn't lying. Of the 10 barrels of rum he took out, there were only 4 barrels left. It was estimated that they would run out tomorrow or the day after. Then they would have to wait for Hannah's distillery to be completed and start brewing new rum. So fast. Jason and the surrounding customers who came for the rum all sighed. However, after thinking about it, they felt a little lucky. At least they had drunk a few glasses these days. Such good wine was hard to come by. Jason took Adolphus to find a place to sit at the door and shared a table with 2 of his drinking buddies. Jason chatted with them for a while. Seeing that Adolphus's face was still serious, he didn't introduce them to each other. When the dishes were served, they would naturally become familiar with each other after drinking a few more glasses. "I don't see them coming," Adolphus said softly. "Maybe they have been cured, so they don't have to come," Jason replied casually. He hoped that the siblings would not come tonight. He was really worried that his brother, who had been serious since childhood, would take this matter seriously. If he was blacklisted by the restaurant, he would have nowhere to cry. "Wow, what a beautiful restaurant. Grandpa, why didn't you bring me here earlier?" "Humph." Just then, a clear voice sounded at the door. Adolphus looked back subconsciously and saw a group of 4 people walking in from the door. The leader was a young girl wearing a white mink cloak. That mink cloak was obviously expensive, but that didn't stop Adolphus's gaze. He looked directly at the old man who came in with the young girl, and his eyes widened a little. This was the old man who took the siblings away in the morning, and the people who came in with them were the siblings who came to seek medical treatment. However, the 2 of them had changed their tattered clothes into new ones, and their messy hair had been tidied up, so they didn't look as pitiful as before. What really shocked Adolphus was the young man's eyes. His eyes, which were originally covered with an unknown white substance, had regained some of their original color, as if a layer of white had been scraped off. And he walked over by himself. Although his steps weren't fast, he was obviously in a state where he could see things. How? How is this possible? Adolphus was so shocked that he almost stood up from his chair. He believed that he didn't recognize the wrong person. Even if the young man changed his clothes, the young man was still the same young man. The white in his eyes that hadn't faded away proved that point. But what was going on? It had only been half a day, and his eyes were almost blind. How did they recover so obviously? Isn't this that young man? He can see. Jason couldn't help but exclaim when he noticed the young man who came in. Many customers who were waiting for their dishes to be served looked towards the door when they heard that. Their gazes landed on Lucy and Darren. When they saw Darren walk in by himself, and his eyes that had regained some clarity, it instantly caused a small commotion. Christopher had brought this child to seek medical treatment this afternoon, and it had attracted a lot of attention. Everyone watched him finish 10 skewers of roasted pig's eyes, and they were all looking forward to seeing if his eyes could recover. They didn't expect him to be able to walk by himself tonight. That's great. Mr. Mac has done a good deed again. Can roasted pig's eyes really treat eye diseases? This is real, isn't it? It's not just a treatment. It's a miracle medicine. I'll bring my 7th uncle here to eat roasted pig's eyes tomorrow. He couldn't see for the past few days, and he kept calling me Little Six every day. The customers discussed softly, and were sincerely happy that the child's eyes had recovered. Young man, can your eyes really see? Adolphus stood up to stop Darren, and asked in surprise and doubt. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 1641. Darren looked at Adolphus and pondered for a while. His eyes lit up, and he asked, "You're the doctor from this morning?" "Yes." Adolphus nodded. From the way Darren's eyes focused, he could indeed see. Darren nodded with a shy smile. "Yes, my eyes can see some things now. Although it's still a little blurry, I can really see." "I'm sorry, doctor. We still have to trouble you to look after our sleigh. We forgot to collect it this afternoon," Lucy said to Adolphus with a look of embarrassment. Lucy looked at Adolphus embarrassedly. She had forgotten about the sleigh in the afternoon because Darren had fallen asleep in a hurry. "It's all right. I've kept the sleigh for you." Adolphus waved his hand. What was important now was not the sleigh, but this young man's eyes. How did he recover his vision in just one afternoon? Even if he only recovered part of his vision, it was still unbelievable. "Pardon me for asking, but which doctor did you find to treat your eyes?" Adolphus asked Darren. He already had a guess, but he found it hard to believe. "I didn't find a doctor. Mr. Christopher brought me to this restaurant to eat the roasted pig's eyes. After that, I went back to sleep, and I could see when I woke up." Darren shook his head. He looked past the crowd and towards the kitchen. He saw Meg, who was busy in the kitchen. Although his vision was a little blurry, his eyes still lit up immediately. "It's him. He's the one who cured my eyes." "Indeed, It's roasted pig's eyes. Adolphus suddenly felt his throat dry up. There was an indescribable feeling in his heart. Half of it was because he was happy that this young man's eyes could see again after being cured, and the other half was because he couldn't really explain it himself. As an ophthalmologist with 30 years of experience, and known as the best ophthalmologist in Chaos City, he had his own pride. However, an eye disease that even he couldn't do anything about was cured by a restaurant owner with just 10 skewers of roasted pig's eyes. This feeling of defeat was even more unacceptable than being defeated by other doctors. Isn't that Dr. Adolphus? Yes. He's the best ophthalmologist in Chaos City. He has cured countless patients with eye diseases. I didn't expect him to come to Amy's for a meal too. Many people recognized Adolphus, and some familiar people greeted him. However, not many people noticed the disappointment on his face. Dr. Adolphus. Christopher turned around and greeted Adolphus with a smile. Just as he was about to explain Darren's situation to him, he saw that Adolphus's expression was a little unnatural. He thought about it, and understood. Instead, he said, "What a coincidence. You're here for dinner too. Let's talk next time. I'll bring the children to sit at the side first. There aren't many seats left." "Alright, talk to you later." Adolphus glanced at Christopher gratefully before returning to his seat. "You can rest assured now. This child's eyes will definitely recover. Don't worry about it. Mr. Mack is a good man. Of course, he's also a genius." Jason saw that Adolphus's expression was a little unnatural, so he smiled and patted him on the shoulder to comfort him. "You know that I'm not the kind of person who is jealous of other people's talents," Adolphus said seriously. "If you were that kind of person, wouldn't I have been chopped to death by you 100 times? You don't have that kind of plaything." Adolphus rolled his eyes with a smile. All right. Let's not talk about this. Let's talk about this rum. How many glasses do you want to drink tonight? Mr. Mack never lies. If he said there's not much left, then it's definitely not going to be sold for a few days. 1 glass is 1 glass less. Jason changed the topic. Then I'll definitely have a few more glasses. Don't blame me for not reminding you. The strength of this 15-year-old rum is no joke. With my alcohol tolerance, I'll be drunk after 2.5 glasses. Furthermore, I'll have to be carried out of the house. Adolphus thought seriously for a while, and said, "Then I'll have 1.5 glasses. All right, then we'll have 4 glasses in total." Jason nodded. He opened the menu and pushed it in front of Adolphus. "Come, order the dishes that go with the wine." Adolphus looked at the menu. It was painted with vivid colors that resembled real dishes. His gaze quickly landed on the roasted pig's eyes. Roasted pig's eyes, 300 copper coins per skewer. 300 copper coins could buy a huge pig's trotter in Chaos City, and it was enough for a whole family to have 2 meals. 300 copper coins for a skewer of roasted pig's eyes was not cheap. However, since this roasted pig's eyes could treat such a serious eye disease, it was not too much to sell it for 300 copper coins a skewer. He had seen many patients who were willing to fork out all their wealth in exchange for their sight. If their eye disease could be treated by eating roasted pig's eyes, they would be willing to pay 3,000 copper coins or even 30,000 copper coins, let alone 300 copper coins a skewer. "You want to try this?" Jason saw that Adolphus's gaze was fixed on the roasted pig's eyes. He smiled and said, "I saw them having a good time yesterday. Why don't we order a few skewers to try today? Can normal customers who don't have eye diseases order it too?" Adolphus asked uncertainly. Of course. Mr. Mack didn't say that this could treat eye diseases in the first place. It was the customers who discovered it today. Just like those ladies who came to eat tofu pudding because they wanted to become more beautiful, they might not be able to compete with those tough men in front of them. After all, tofu pudding is so delicious that it doesn't matter if it's male or female. Just the taste alone is already worth it. It doesn't matter if it has any beautifying effects, Jason said with a smile. A snack that costs 200 copper coins per serving is worth it too. Adolphus glanced at the price of the tofu pudding. You can ask the waiter if we still have a chance to eat tofu pudding later. I strongly recommend that you eat sweet tofu pudding. It's even better than eating candy, Jason recommended seriously. Yabamiya happened to turn to their table and asked with a smile, "Hello, what would you like to order?" "We'd like 4 glasses of rum, 2 skewers of roasted pig's eyes, and a medium spicy grilled fish." Jason ordered quickly, and then asked, "Oh, yes. Is there any tofu pudding today?" "Yes, but there aren't many tofu puddings left for both flavors." Mia nodded with a smile. "That's great. We'd like 2 sweet tofu puddings." Jason made the decision for Adolphus without hesitation. He then looked at him and asked, "Is there anything else you want to eat?" "That's all for now." Adolphus glanced at the spicy grilled fish that Jason ordered. This amount should be enough for the 2 of them, so he closed the menu casually. Bookhouse Reading Website. Chapter 1642. Darren sized up the restaurant with curiosity in his eyes. Just like what his sister had said, this restaurant was very beautiful. It was like a starry sky. The bright and comfortable lights, and the beautiful tables and chairs were all novel to him. However, the way the various races sat together in the restaurant made him a little fearful. For example, there were a few demons at the table next to him whose bodies were covered with crisscrossing lava cracks. Although they were smiling kindly at him, he still felt tremendous pressure because he had never seen demons since he was young. This restaurant is so interesting. There are actually customers from all races, just like our school, Dorothy said excitedly as she looked around. She often went to high-end restaurants with her parents or grandfather, but most restaurants would have a special distinction. Some were only open to humans and elves, while others were only open to orcs and dwarves. There were very few restaurants that accommodated all races, let alone elves and demons. However, everything was realized here. All the races sat together harmoniously, especially in the designated hot pot area next door. There was actually a table with customers from all the races squeezed together. If not for the 9-grid hot pot in the middle, it would look like a meeting of all the races had started in advance. Yes, this is Boss's true ability. Christopher also nodded with a smile. He was really convinced today. Even Adolphus couldn't do anything about the eye disease, but after eating Mr. Mac's 10 portions of roasted pig's eyes, he could actually see again. It would be a pity if he didn't open a clinic with this ability. Christopher opened the menu and placed it in the middle of the table with a smile, and said, "Then let's order 10 portions of roasted pig's eyes for Darren later. You guys can order whatever you want to eat. I heard there are many delicious things on the menu." Lucy and Darren remained reserved and didn't move. Dorothy generously chose a few dishes that she thought looked good, and then turned the menu to Lucy and Darren. She smiled and said, "I've chosen. You guys can order a few more. Order whatever you want. Don't stand on ceremony. Grandpa will pay the bill anyway. We don't need it. You've already ordered a lot. It should be enough for us. It would be a waste to order more." Lucy shook her head slightly. "It's okay. Maybe there's something bad in the food I ordered," Dorothy said nonchalantly. Christopher looked at Dorothy sternly and said, "Dorothy, it's not good to waste food. Furthermore, this restaurant is different from other restaurants. If you waste food, you'll be blacklisted, and you won't be allowed to enter again." "Oh." Dorothy shrugged and said innocently, Grandpa, I also cherish food, okay? I always finish all the food at school. The ones who don't cherish food are the chefs who make terrible food. If the food is so bad that the customers can't finish it, then they're the ones who are wasting food. Christopher thought about it seriously and said, "You do have a point. No matter if it tastes good or not, we should finish the food, right?" Lucy said softly but firmly. "Yes." Darren nodded in agreement. During the cold winters in the village, if the harvest wasn't good, they would even eat tree roots. As long as there was food, it was enough. It didn't matter if it tasted good or not. What was important was whether it could fill their stomachs and support them through the cold nights. Christopher and Dorothy looked at Lucy and her brother in a daze for a while. They suddenly realized something, and nodded at the same time. "Yes, it's not good to waste food. Let's order as much as we can eat." Dorothy nodded. Then, she flipped open the menu again and removed some of the food she ordered. She passed the menu to Lucy and Darren with a smile, and said, "Now, you can order 2 more dishes that don't look too full. Sister, I still want to eat the fragrant fried rice from lunch. Is that okay?" Darren asked softly as he looked at Lucy. He missed the taste of the Yangzhou fried rice. He still wanted to see that beautiful, rainbow-like dish with his own eyes. "Then we'll just have the fried rice from lunch." Lucy pushed the menu back to Dorothy. "In that case, should we try this ice cream? It looks like a pretty good dessert," Dorothy said as she pointed at the ice cream on the menu. "The 3 of you can have one each. I saw other children eating ice cream the last time, and they said it was pretty good." Christopher decided for them with a smile. Yabamiya happened to turn to their table, so Christopher ordered the children's food, as well as the rum and beef kebabs that he wanted. "Please wait a moment." Yabamiya looked at Darren's eyes, and turned to walk into the kitchen with a smile. "The service staff here are so pretty." "All of them are super pretty," Dorothy said softly as she looked at Christopher. Dorothy said softly as she looked at Christopher with some resentment. "Grandpa, you actually hid such a good restaurant and didn't bring me here. You've really disappointed me. Aren't I bringing you here?" Christopher didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Boss, that young man can really see. The roasted pig's eyes are amazing," Mia said in surprise when she entered the kitchen and saw Meg, who was roasting the pig's eyes seriously. "It's pretty good." Meg also had a smile on his face. He had already seen Darren's medical report when they came in. He smiled and said, "The toxicity of the toxic cataract has mostly subsided. Next, he just needs to take 10 skewers of roasted pig's eyes for a course of treatment. He'll be completely healed after about 3 courses. That's not right. Why does it feel like I'm prescribing medicine? Boss, why are you so familiar with this?" Yabamiya was also surprised. As a qualified chef, I should have a deep understanding of the food I'm cooking. Only then can I prevent myself from prescribing the wrong medicine. "No, I mean, serving the wrong dish," Meg explained calmly. "Oh." Yabamiya nodded thoughtfully. She didn't really understand what Meg was talking about, either. Anyway, it was fine as long as the boss was awesome. "By the way, did Amy go out to play by herself?" Mia glanced at the counter, but didn't see Amy. "She brought Hannah to play with Jessica." Meg smiled. Hannah had been drawing in the restaurant behind closed doors for a few days, and she finally finished it. She slept for the whole day and only woke up in the evening. Seeing how groggy she was, Meg got Amy to bring her out for a walk. "Also, Anna asked me when Shirley would be back yesterday. Can you confirm where she went?" Mia asked Meg in a low voice as she approached him. Meg glanced at Anna, who was holding the cash box in a daze, and nodded slightly. She's trapped in the wind forest. I'm trying to confirm her location. I'll bring her back when I find her. Chapter 1643. Are these roasted pig's eyes? Adolphus looked at the plate in front of him seriously. There were 2 skewers of roasted meat that gave off a tantalizing aroma. They were indeed pig's eyes that had been dug out from the roots. However, after roasting them, they didn't look as scary as he had imagined. Under the oily brown and slightly charred skin, the eyeballs could still be seen. There were only 5 pig's eyes on each skewer, and they were strung together with bamboo sticks. Although the aroma was tantalizing, the roasted pig's eyes looked ordinary. There was nothing special about it, but it could actually treat the eye disease that had been troubling him. Let me see what's so special about this roasted pig's eyes. Adolphus reached out and picked up a skewer of roasted pig's eyes, preparing to taste it himself. Don't rush. My predecessor's experience tells me that you can't rush when eating roasted pig's eyes. You have to wait for them to cool down a little. Before Jason could finish his reminder, Adolphus had already bitten open the first roasted pig's eye. PFFF, the sound of the eyeball exploding was accompanied by the boiling liquid that splattered everywhere. Luckily, Jason was prepared and raised the plate in his hand, barely blocking the liquid that was splattering towards him. However, Adolphus wasn't prepared at all, and he directly received the baptism of the boiling hot liquid. Hot! With his understanding of eyes, Adolphus easily bit open the pig's eye. However, he didn't expect such a boiling liquid to be hidden under such a simple and calm appearance. His taste buds almost lost their effect at that moment. The boiling sensation made him want to spit out everything in his mouth. However, the burden of being a semi-public idol made him hold himself back. The boiling sensation gradually dissipated. Just as he was thinking about how to deal with the pig's eye in his mouth, the wonderful taste of the liquid started to blossom. This taste. Adolphus' eyes gradually brightened. It was a taste that was even more rich and delicious than the bone broth. As the heat dissipated, it started to heal his mouth that had been scalded by the boiling broth. What a wonderful taste! He didn't expect such gentleness to be hidden under the boiling sensation. There wasn't much liquid left. After he greedily sucked it out, he started to try chewing the rest of the eyeball. As an ophthalmologist with 30 years of clinical experience, this was indeed his first time eating pig's eyes. Or rather, it was his first time eating an eye that was bigger than a fish's eye. He had observed and dissected pig's eyes before because pig's eyes were very similar to human eyes, and they were easier to obtain. However, it was his first time chewing and tasting pig's eyes seriously like this. The tough outer membrane was used to protect the eyeball. It was very chewy, and there was a part of the eyeball that was as brittle as a bone. It should be the translucent part of the eyeball. When he tasted it carefully, it was as if he was dissecting the pig's eye again. He felt that this pig's eye should be slightly different from the pig's eyes from the domestic pigs that he had dissected before. The structure was generally similar, but the contents inside should be different. There seemed to be more transparent material, and it was fuller. After a while, the first roasted pig's eye was swallowed. The wonderful taste was still lingering in his mouth. At this moment, he had completely retracted his previous arbitrary judgment. Such a delicious and special roasted pig's eye, even if it did not have any other effects, just its mesmerizing taste alone was worth far more than 200 copper coins. How is it? Do you feel anything? Jason asked softly. Adolphus thought seriously for a while, and said, "It smells really good." Jason was speechless. After eating this roasted pig's eye, there will be a hint of coolness around the eyes, but it is not obvious. If you don't pay attention to it, you will probably miss it. Maybe it's working on the eyes, Adolphus said with a smile. Right? We still have to give Mr. Mack credit for this, Jason said with a smile. Adolphus nodded in agreement, and said, if this roasted pig's eye can treat some difficult eye diseases, it will indeed be a great thing for the patients. This boss is indeed a genius. He can make such delicious roasted pig's eyes, and it can even treat illnesses. Jason placed a glass of rum in front of Adolphus with a smile, and said, come, let the roasted pig's eyes cool first. Try this 15-year-old rum. It's much better than the 3-year-old rum that I bought years ago. Your Yangzhou fried rice. Yabamiya placed a plate of fried rice in front of Darren. What a beautiful fried rice. Darren moved closer, and his eyes lit up when he saw the fried rice with ingredients of various colors mixed together on the plate. His sister was right. It was as beautiful as a rainbow. Wow, this fried rice looks really good. Dorothy's eyes lit up as well. The extremely good looks attracted her attention immediately. The fragrance of the eggs and various ingredients also made her swallow her saliva uncontrollably. Big sister Dorothy, this is super delicious. Darren looked up at Dorothy, picked up a spoon, and passed it to her. He smiled, and said, you can have the first bite. It's okay. I ordered a lot of food. This is for you and Lucy. You two can eat. Dorothy waved her hand with a smile, and said, after seeing your fried rice, I'm looking forward to the next dish even more. Seems like this is indeed a very good restaurant. Big sister, you eat. Darren turned the spoon to Lucy. Darren, you eat. I'll eat after you eat. Lucy shook her head. She took the spoon, scooped a spoonful of fried rice, and was about to feed it to Darren when she saw his eyes that had become much clearer. She stuffed the spoon back into his hand with a smile, and said, it's your turn to eat now. Darren took the spoon, but quickly put it back on the plate. He smiled shyly, and said, I'll wait for everyone to eat together. After the busy dinner service ended, the customers walked out of the restaurant with their slightly bloated bellies with satisfied smiles on their faces. Elizabeth quickly finished cleaning the restaurant, and the restaurant that had been open for a day looked brand new. Everyone, go back and rest early. You still have work tomorrow. Meg took off his apron and smiled at everyone. However, no one had the intention to leave. Boss, we've all heard from Mia that if Shirley is trapped in the wind forest, we want to rescue her together, just like the operation at the Falk tribe previously. I believe we can definitely do it, Barbara said to Meg seriously. Yes. It's too unsafe there. We can't leave her there alone. Mia nodded. If necessary, I can ask the elders in the tribe for help. Gina raised her hand. I'm not sure if my uncle, who has just become a new ancestor, can control his power. However, if I threaten him with my life, I don't think he will refuse to come, Camilla said lazily as she leaned against the counter. I can fight 10 of them. Irina walked down from upstairs. Me too. Amy agreed with Ugly Duckling in her arms. Bookhouse reading website. Chapter 1644. Meg looked at everyone and fell silent for a while before nodding. Actually, I received a letter today, and I've obtained Shirley's latest exact location. If we want to take action, we have to go deep into the Elven territory. It's extremely dangerous. Then, Big Sister Shirley must be in great danger now, right? Anna asked Meg with concern. The others were also looking at Meg nervously. This was the first time they had heard of Shirley's exact location. She's slightly injured, but her condition is stable now. She's not in danger for now. Meg shook his head slightly. However, the wind forest is under full lockdown now. She won't be able to escape on her own. If that's the case, it's easier to make mistakes if there are too many people. I'll go back and bring her back. Irina looked at Meg. No one is more familiar with the wind forest than I am. Since that's the case, I'll have to trouble your highness to make the trip. Meg nodded slightly. She's my most capable vanguard. I naturally won't leave her there alone, Irina said matter-of-factly. Meg turned to everyone and said, I know everyone is concerned about Shirley, but the wind forest is more than 10 times more dangerous than the fog tribe. Our goal is to bring Shirley back safely, so we'll leave this to Princess Irina. Everyone nodded slightly upon hearing that. Irina was far more powerful than everyone present. If only a small number of people were allowed to take action, she was undoubtedly the most suitable person. But, Your Highness, if you go back to the forest, Helena will definitely make you stay at all costs, Phyrus said worriedly. The scene of being surrounded in the goblin's underground cave was still vivid in her mind. It was too dangerous to return to the wind forest. The person who can make me stay is not born yet. As long as I want to leave, no one can make me stay. Irina patted Phyrus' head with a smile. Bean Sprout, stay at home and wait for me to come back. I'll take my leave first. Irina glanced at Meg, then a faint golden light flashed beneath her feet, and she disappeared from the restaurant. Everyone, let's go back first. You might be able to see Shirley when you come tomorrow, Meg said with a smile. Only then did everyone bid their farewells and leave. After everyone left, Amy looked at Meg, who was closing the door, and asked doubtfully, But father, I don't think you told big sister Irina the address just now, right? I would have forgotten if you didn't mention it. Meg smacked his head, looked at Amy and Anna, and said, Looks like only Amy and Anna can sleep first tonight. I'm going to tell Irina the address and get her to bring Shirley back. Uncle Meg, you can really bring Sister Shirley back, right? Anna looked at Meg with tears in her eyes. Yes, we will definitely bring her back because she's a member of our restaurant. She'll always be a member. Meg went forward and placed his hand on Anna's head gently with a smile. Take Anna to sleep first, okay? You'll be able to see her when you wake up tomorrow morning. Anna nodded vigorously. Let's go, big sister Anna. Let's go to sleep first. Father and big sister Irina will definitely be able to bring Sister Shirley back. Amy reached out to grab Anna's hand and led her upstairs. Meow, Ugly Duckling wagged its tail and followed behind the two of them. I'm leaving now. Meg turned to leave and closed the door slowly. Father, you must come back safely. Amy's voice sounded from behind the door. We will. Meg's lips curled up, and he disappeared from the restaurant's door. 5 minutes later, on the peak of a stone mountain outside the city, Irina was already sitting on the griffin's back. She turned her head to look at Meg, who was sitting behind her. Is it news from the Grey Temple? No, the Grey Temple hasn't received any concrete news about Shirley yet. Meg shook his head. You lied to them. Irina frowned. No. Meg shook his head with a smile. An old friend wrote me a letter and told me Shirley's exact location. An old friend? A woman? Irina's eyes narrowed slightly. See for yourself. Meg felt an unusual murderous aura. He obediently took out a letter from his pocket and handed it to Irina. At the same time, he said, Let's go, Ozzy. Let's explore the wind forest at night. Howl, Ozzy let out a joyful cry. With a flap of its wings, it disappeared into the sky like a sharp arrow. Cough, cough, in a dimly lit room, a muffled cough sounded. The dim candlelight fell on the pale face on the bed. It still couldn't hide his handsomeness, but the pair of almond-shaped eyes that were usually lively couldn't hide the tiredness. He covered his mouth with a handkerchief and coughed twice to restrain himself. His good-looking eyebrows were twisted in pain. After a while, he removed his hand from his mouth. The white handkerchief was stained with blood. He put his hand on the edge of the bed to prevent the handkerchief from staining the white blanket. Creak. The sound of the door opening sounded. His body tensed up immediately. His right hand was already holding the sword hidden under the pillow. However, the door was quickly closed, followed by the sound of light footsteps. He relaxed his expression and let go of the sword. I came back a little late today. I didn't find anything suitable for you to eat. There are only 2 fruits. Sally, who was wearing a rather luxurious long dress, came forward. She took out 2 red wild fruits and placed them on the wooden table beside the bed. Then, she took out a small flask. This is a small flask of holy water of life. It will be of some help to your injuries. Blower supported himself on the bed and sat up slowly. He looked at Sally seriously, and said, "Thank you. It's all right. This is what I should do." A smile appeared on Sally's tired face. She passed the fruits to Blower and helped him open the flask before sitting down on the wooden chair at the side. The 2 of them were silent. Only the soft sound of Blower chewing the wild fruits could be heard in the room. The 2 fruits were finished in a short while. After drinking the holy water of life, Blower's pale face regained some color. Sally helped him keep the flask and softly said, "I wrote a letter to Mr. Meg." Blower's expression froze. He shook his head slightly and said, "I shouldn't have told them. The search for you has intensified in the past few days. Helena gave a death order to find you at all costs. She also offered a very high reward. With our strength, we won't be able to let you leave the Wind Forest safely." Sally was a little dejected. "Helena wants me to go to the Tree of Life. I'm afraid I can't help you too much." Chapter 1645. Helena stood on a high platform in the starry cave abode. Below the platform stood a dozen elves with their heads lowered. "I'll give you 3 days. Find Vincent's son even if you have to dig 3 feet into the ground," Helena said coldly. "Yes," the elves replied fearfully. They quickly left after getting permission to leave. "Vincent really has a good son. He's stirring up trouble in the elven race." "Exactly. I thought it would be over after Irina took away those lowly slaves. I didn't expect him to kill so many lords alone. Hurry up and find her. Find her while she's injured. If she recovers, we don't know who will be the next victim." The elves chatted for a while before dispersing. "Don't worry, Great Elder. The Wind Forest has been completely sealed off. She definitely won't be able to escape." Elliot stood below the platform and looked at Helena with a flattering smile. Borg was dead. Although Sally's conferring ceremony was ruined, she still successfully became the new princess of the elven race. As a result, Elliot's status had soared, and he was now Helena's #1 favorite. He looked like he was second only to her and above everyone else. "If he doesn't die, I'm afraid you won't be able to live in peace for the rest of your life. You contributed a lot to Vincent's death." Helena's gaze landed on Elliot. Elliot's expression froze. However, he quickly smiled and said, "Vincent betrayed the elven race and tried to attack you. He deserves to die. His son is worse than him. He definitely won't live for long. Since he can't escape, we have to prevent others from coming to save him. With Irina's personality, she will definitely come to save him as long as she knows about him." Helena retracted her gaze. "News of him definitely won't get out. Besides, we've already made full preparations. As long as Irina dares to come, she definitely won't be able to leave," Elliot said confidently. "The letter was written to you by Sally." Irina threw away the letter that had already been burned to ashes. She was a little surprised. "I should have told you that she worked as a waitress in the restaurant for a period of time." Meg nodded. She was engaged to Blower. However, Elliot was one of the attackers when Vincent was attacked and killed. Irina's brows furrowed slightly. So, she still chose to save Blower and protect him. She's a good girl, that's for sure. Meg nodded. How did you know? Ahem. The first thing a restaurant looks at when choosing employees is character. That was why I hired her. Meg cleared his throat to hide his awkwardness, and continued, so, we only have to follow the map that she provided, go around those places that are heavily guarded, and pick up Blower at her residence. After that, we can evacuate immediately. It sounds very simple. It's not challenging at all. Irina pursed her lips disinterestedly. Since Sally helped Blower, we have to make sure that this matter doesn't affect her. Compared to other people, I think it might be a good result if she manages the elven race in the end, Meg said with a smile. Then, we have to kill her father first. Irina said with a serious expression, although I don't like to be the queen, there are many people who covet this position. Elliot is even more arrogant. He can't wait to learn from Borg. Although you're right, it sounds a little strange. Meg sighed. He had to face this problem sooner or later. He didn't know what kind of situation it would be when the time came. Z's speed was extremely fast. Under its full speed, it arrived at the border of the wind forest in less than 2 hours. Z, retract your aura and fly higher, Meg ordered. The purple-striped griffin immediately flew higher. It pierced through the clouds and continued to fly toward the inner part of the wind forest. After Sally became the new princess of the elven race, she moved out of the Brewster family's territory and moved into the princess palace that was specially prepared for her. According to the elven tradition, the new princess will move into the cave where the Tree of Life is to cultivate a relationship with the Tree of Life and gain its approval. It seems like the little tree still doesn't want anyone to move in after I left, Irina said with a smile. Has the Tree of Life become a spirit? Meg asked curiously. I'm not sure about that either. However, it has spirituality, and can sense many things. It also has preferences. In the elven race, it has the best relationship with me apart from my mother. Then it has really become a spirit. Meg's lips twitched. He was just about to open his mouth to speak. However, tree people weren't a particularly rare species in this world. The Tree of Life was regarded as the holy tree of the elven race. After thousands of years of worship, it would be strange if it didn't become a spirit. We're here, Irina reminded as she looked down. Z, go down. Meg patted Z lightly. The purple-striped griffin turned its body around, and began to dive down silently. The scenery below gradually became clearer. The Princess Palace was built in the center of many buildings. It was adjacent to the Queen's Palace, and was the core of the entire elven race. It was already late at night, but there were still bonfires lit everywhere. There were also elves patrolling the area. The security was tight. The purple-striped griffin made use of the dark night to land quietly in a dense forest. I've already confirmed their location. Wait for me here. Irina said to Mag before she turned into a shadow, and disappeared in the direction of the Princess Palace. It's okay. It's good to be a private chauffeur. Meg reached out to pat Z's head. Z was trying to comfort him. What if his wife was too strong? He didn't want to be a burden. Tap, tap. There was a knock on the door. Blower instinctively grabbed the sword under his pillow. A hint of panic appeared on Sally's face, but she quickly suppressed it. She stood up and said, I'm already resting. If there's anything, we can talk about it tomorrow. I'm Irina. A voice sounded from outside the door. Your Highness. Both Blower and Sally's expressions changed at the same time. Sally turned to look at Blower. It's her. Blower nodded. He was completely sure that this was Irina's voice. Apart from worry, he was also touched. Sally quickly walked to the door and opened it. Hello, Sally. Irina stood at the door and smiled at Sally. Sally looked at Irina, who was wearing a white dress. She was just like the beautiful, proud, and powerful princess back then. She bowed slightly and said, Hello, Your Highness. Chapter 1646. Your Highness. Blower struggled to get up from his bed. He turned to Irina with surprise and concern in his eyes. Why are you here? I came to pick you up. Irina walked into the room, and her brows furrowed at the sight of Blower's pale face. A small brocade box appeared in her hand, and she opened it to reveal a golden pill. She handed it to Blower and said, Eat this. This is a life pill. Blower looked at the golden pill in the brocade box in shock. He opened the lid, and rich life force energy wafted toward him. It was far more abundant than the water of life. He hurriedly shook his head and said, This is too precious. You shouldn't waste it on me. It's just a pill, what's so precious about it? Irina pinched Blower's mouth and stuffed the pill into his mouth before feeding him a mouthful of water of life. Your injuries are too severe, and there are too many guards outside. Helena will be able to detect my presence if I attack you. If you want to leave, you have to at least be able to walk on your own. Blower didn't say anything else upon hearing that. He sat down on the bed with his legs crossed, and began to draw upon the rich life force energy to heal his body. His body had been severely wounded by a 10th tier great magic caster's attack, but it was quickly healing under the nourishment of this powerful life force energy. He was very touched that the princess would use something as precious as the life pill to heal his injuries. One had to realize that the queen had expended a large amount of milk of life to refine these pills. There were only 9 of them in total, and all of them were holy healing pills that could enhance one's cultivation. Sally closed the door and returned to her room. She looked at Irina, and her lips moved, but she chose to remain silent in the end. You don't have to feel sorry for me. This isn't something that you can change. Irina looked at Sally with a smile and said, I've been eating at Amy's a lot recently, and Amy and the others often mention you. If you have the chance in the future, you can go back and visit them. Sally's nasal voice became a little heavier as she looked at Irina with a smile. So everyone still hasn't forgotten about her. Tears welled up in Sally's eyes as memories of her time at Amy's flashed through her mind. A simple life, loving family, and delicious food. That was probably the happiest period of her life. However, she was now shouldering too many things, and she was afraid that there would be even more in the future. Even if she wanted to abandon everything and leave, she could no longer do so. But why did you save him? Irina looked into Sally's eyes and asked. No matter how she looked at it, she shouldn't have done it. Maybe, we're all doing the same thing. Sally also looked at Irina, and her clear eyes lit up. Irina's eyes also lit up. She nodded and said, Then we will definitely succeed. About 3 minutes later, Blower opened his eyes, got out of bed, and put on his shoes. Thank you. Blower extended a deep bow toward Sally. You're welcome. Sally nodded. Let's go. Irina turned and walked toward the door. Do you have a message for them? Blower asked Sally. Sally was silent for a moment before shaking her head. Take care. Blower turned and left with Irina. Sally stood at the door for a while before closing it with a forlorn expression. From that day forth, she would be the only one left in this forest. You're so good at switching between men's and women's clothes. Irina teased Blower as they easily evaded the guards outside the princess palace. It's just a hobby. Blower replied in a slightly awkward manner. He stole a glance at Irina, worried that the princess would think that he was a pervert. Irina looked back at Blower with a serious expression and said, I still like you in women's clothes. Blower raised an eyebrow. He pondered for a moment before nodding. I'll change back when I get back. Anna, that lass, seems to like you a lot. She doesn't look too happy when she doesn't see you back, Irina said casually as she continued walking. Anna. Blower clenched his fists tightly, and a hint of guilt welled up in his heart. He had thought that she would be happy to be with Amy and the others, but now, it seemed that she was going to be very happy. I'm very sorry about what happened to your father. I should be the one to avenge him, but you have to risk your life here. Irina stopped by the wall and turned to look at Blower with an apologetic expression. Blower shook his head. Father died in battle for the elven race. You don't have to blame yourself or apologize. However, as his son, I should bear this grudge. Then let's get some interest back today. Irina reached out and pulled off the blood-stained bandage around Blower's waist. Then, she used her fingers as a knife to cut it into 5 pieces. She wrote 2 lines of words on each piece. Thank you for your help. I'll repay you 100-fold in the future. I'll repay you for your kindness today. Blower looked at the different words on each piece of cloth and looked at Irina in confusion. When we leave later, I'll throw them into the territories of Morris, Gibson, and those few families. Hasn't Helena been very strict recently? Even if they don't die, they'll be skinned alive first. Irina smiled. After seeing the patrolling elves leave, she brought Blower into the dense forest at the side. In the distance, Blower had already noticed the huge beast in the forest, as well as the man sitting on its back. That was the man who won the favor of the princess. That was the man who won the admiration of the entire world. That was the man who had once saved the night elves and accompanied the princess to release all the elven slaves. He had to admit that only such a man was worthy of the best princess. Let's go. Irina appeared beside Meg in a flash. Blower stood in front of the purple-striped griffin and bowed slightly to Meg to express his gratitude. Meg sized Blower up. It seemed like his injuries were better than he had imagined since he was able to walk here on his own. Irina must have already treated him. Come on up, Meg said in a low voice. Blower didn't hesitate. He tapped lightly on the tree at the side and landed lightly on the griffin's back. Let's go back. Meg patted Ozzy's back gently. Ozzy flapped its wings and rose silently into the sky again, piercing through the darkness like an arrow. When the purple-striped griffin rose to a sufficient height, Irina let go of the cloth strips, and the 5 strips of cloth fell in 5 different directions. Let's see who's the lucky one who can pick up these treasures, Irina said with a smile. No pop-up window. Chapter 1647. Amy, do you think Uncle Meg and Big Sister Irina will be able to bring Big Sister Shirley back? Anna asked worriedly as she sat on the bed and looked at the stars outside the window. Trust me. They'll definitely be able to. Amy replied as she sat beside Anna drowsily with Ugly Duckling's head resting on her pillow. Meow, Ugly Duckling also opened its eyes and answered drowsily. But why are they still not back after so long? Anna asked worriedly. Roast duck. Roast duck leg smells so good. Hee hee. Amy bit Ugly Duckling's head with a mysterious smile. Meanwhile, the drowsy Ugly Duckling's eyes widened as it slowly turned to look at Amy with fear. Anna turned to look at Amy. She got up and laid her down with resignation. Then, she covered her with a small blanket and lowered the brightness of the lights in the room. She sat by the window and continued to wait in a daze with her chin in her hands. After an unknown period of time. Anna. Blower pushed open the door, and his eyes reddened at the sight of Anna sleeping by the window. Anna seemed to have been woken up by the sound of the door opening. She raised her head and looked in the direction of the door. Big Brother Blower. Anna's eyes lit up immediately. She almost jumped out of her chair and threw herself into Blower's arms as she sobbed, "You're finally back. I thought you didn't want Anna anymore." "Anna, I'm back. I'm sorry to have made you worry," Blower said apologetically as he hugged Anna. "Am I dreaming? Big Brother Blower, are you really back?" Anna's tears fell as she looked up at Blower in disbelief. "No, I'm back. I'm really back." Blower reached out to wipe away her tears as he shook his head with a pained expression. He didn't dare to imagine how Anna had spent this period of time. His heart and mind had been consumed by hatred, and he had almost forgotten that she was still waiting for him. Anna nodded. She reached out to touch the scab at the corner of Blower's eyebrow, and begged with a pained expression, "Can you not leave Anna again? Don't leave Anna alone again." "All right, I won't do it again," Blower promised solemnly. "It's good that you're back. We don't have to worry anymore." Meg stood outside the door and looked at the two of them with a smile. His gaze went past the two of them and landed on Amy, who was still sleeping soundly. The little girl was really not affected at all. "Boss." Blower picked up Anna and turned to Meg with a grateful expression as he said, "Thank you for taking care of Anna for me during this time. Anna has been a great help in the shop recently. She's also very happy with Amy." Meg shook his head with a smile, and said, "Stay here tonight. I'm afraid it's not convenient for you to go to the Elven Embassy. There's no need for that. My people have already established themselves in Chaos City. I can go and find them." Blower shook his head. After a brief moment of contemplation, he said, "I need 3 days to recuperate. After that, I'll continue to work at the restaurant." 5 days. Come back to work after you've recovered." Meg didn't stop him. He helped Anna pack her luggage, and sent them out of the restaurant. "Do you think he's Shirley or Blower?" Irina appeared next to Mag, and asked as she watched the big and small figures walking away at the end of the long street. "He's Blower, and he's also Shirley." Meg smiled, and said, "Perhaps there's no conflict at all. He enjoys 2 identities, and he's also immersed in them." Irina pondered for a moment with furrowed brows, and then nodded thoughtfully. Meg closed the door, and casually asked, "Did Sally say anything?" "She's going to become the best elven princess after me," Irina said calmly. "Very high praise." Meg looked at Irina with a surprised expression. After all, the height that she could reach was beyond the reach of most elves. "However, you seem to be very interested in her." Irina turned to look at Meg. "As a boss, it's normal to be concerned about an employee," Meg said seriously. "She's the elven princess now, not your employee. That's not important. What's important is that she used to be one." "That's enough," Meg said calmly. "I'm a nostalgic person. I heard that before you met me, you met a desert flower at the border." "Ahem, I don't think so. I seem to have forgotten some things after I got injured. I don't have any recollection of the desert." Meg was a little flustered. He really didn't want to take the blame. What desert flower? He didn't know anything about it. Shouldn't Medusa be the one staying in the desert? You'll sleep in the study tonight." Irina turned and went upstairs with a smile. Meg shrugged, and went upstairs with a resigned expression. After bringing Blower back, he felt as if a rock had been lifted from his heart. Sally was still the cold and kind girl in his memory. It was a pity that he couldn't reveal his identity during this mission. Otherwise, he would have brought her some specialties from the restaurant. My lord, someone found this blood-stained cloth in the territory of the Morris family. The blood fiend confirmed that the bloodstains on it belonged to Blower. An elf quickly walked into the hall with a piece of cloth, and presented it to Elliot with both hands. The Morris family is stationed at the border. Could it be that Blower has already left the Wind Forest through their territory? Elliot said angrily as he looked at the words of gratitude on the cloth. Even though the name wasn't written, the blood fiend had already confirmed the identity of the person who wrote it. Send people to surround the Morris family and bring Morris to the Starry Cave abode. The Great Elder will make the decision. Elliot quickly walked out with the cloth in his hand. He didn't expect the Morris family to do such a thing even though they were at loggerheads. Look, what's that hanging on the tree? Outside the Gibson family's territory, a team of elves holding torches stopped in their tracks. The leader of the elves took down the cloth hanging on the tree, and his eyes lit up when he saw the words on it. Quick, let's go to the Brewster family's territory. We're going to be rich. Young master, you're finally back. Yngve stood in front of the courtyard gate and looked at Blower, who was holding Anna's hand, with tears glistening in his wrinkled eyes. I couldn't kill all my enemies and avenge my father. Blower lowered his eyes. Since the chief chose to die, he didn't want you to avenge him, Yngve said in a low voice. How can I bear to avenge my father's death? Blower pouted. Is this the purpose of the night elves? Blower looked up at Yngve. His lips trembled, but he still shook his head in the end. Come in. It's good that you're back. Yngve took the luggage from him and turned to enter the courtyard. Book House Reading Website. Chapter 1648. The stars are so beautiful. But which one is Grandpa? Grandpa said that he would become the little star on the right of the brightest star after he died. Look, it's over there. That little, but very bright little star. In the small courtyard, Lucy, who was wrapped in a cotton-padded coat, pointed to the sky and smiled. I see it. Darren's eyes lit up, and his little face was filled with excitement. Lucy turned to look at Darren with a smile, and firmly said, Darren, you will become an outstanding hunter. Darren retracted his gaze, and hesitantly said to Lucy, but Grandpa Christopher said that we can go to school and become knowledgeable people. Don't you want to go back? Lucy frowned. Darren opened his mouth, and then slowly lowered his eyes. He softly said, I will go back with Big Sister. I want to go back and return the money to the villagers. These are all their little savings. Lucy's expression softened. She patted Darren's head, and said, the villagers have helped us a lot all these years. We can't be ungrateful. Darren raised his head again, and nodded at Lucy. I know. Grandpa said that we can't be ungrateful. It's right that you want to become knowledgeable like Big Sister Dorothy. If Grandpa was still alive, he would definitely support you. Lucy looked at Darren with a serious expression and said, but we can't just enjoy what others have given us for granted. Grandpa Christopher has already helped us treat your eyes. We should be grateful and repay him, and not continue to enjoy what he has given us. Big Sister, I know I was wrong. Darren lowered his head. We have to make a trip back to the village tomorrow to return everyone's money. After that, we will come back to Chaos City. Lucy grabbed Darren's hand and smilingly said, Big Sister will work to support you. Darren raised his head immediately, and looked at Lucy in surprise. We are still coming back to Chaos City. I am going to send you to Chaos School so that you can become a knowledgeable person. Then, you won't have to go hunting in the dangerous forest anymore. Lucy nodded. But Darren looked at his frail sister, his heart aching and a little worried. I will go and look for Grandpa Christopher tomorrow morning to bid him farewell. As for work, we will talk about it when we come to Chaos City again, Lucy said with a smile. She looked up at the sky again before pulling Darren to sleep. This Chaos City is really far away. I thought I'd be able to get there in 10 days. Who would have thought that it would take me over a month to get there? A caravan stopped outside Chaos City, and the curtains of a horse-drawn carriage were lifted. An elderly dwarf with a head of white hair lifted the curtains, and looked at the dark city walls with a smile. Yes. I didn't expect Isin Castle to be so far away from Chaos City. However, Master, you have so many luggage and tools. Even the biggest flying steed wouldn't be able to carry them all, Joss said with a smile as he looked out from the other side. Joey had already taken out his coat and respectfully said to Rome, Master, Chaos City doesn't open its gates at night. You've been in the horse-drawn carriage for a day. Do you need to get off and move around? No need. I'll just stay in the carriage and sleep. We can enter the city tomorrow. Rome shook his head with a smile. He looked in the direction of the city walls, and expectantly said, I wonder if I can eat Meg's steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers tomorrow morning. Master, is that steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers really that delicious? Joss asked curiously. The news of Master Rome leaving Isin Castle caused quite a stir. Even the castle lord came to ask him to stay. However, no one knew that the master didn't leave because of the generous conditions that Chaos City offered him. Instead, it was because a chef from Chaos City made a steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers for him. Not only did he get the master, who hadn't made a dish for many years, to give him a cleaver that he made himself, he even moved his workshop all the way to Chaos City. The tightly shut city gates suddenly opened outward slowly, and 2 teams of cavalrymen with torches escorted a person towards their carriage. This is Master Rome's carriage, right? The person in the lead asked loudly as he urged his horse forward. That's me. Rome stood up, and let Joey put his coat on him. He then lifted the curtain and walked out. Master Rome, I've heard a lot about you. That person urged his horse forward, and cupped his fists at Rome. I am Dicus from the City Lord's Castle's Secretariat. I am here on the City Lord's orders to bring Master Rome into the city to rest. Thank you for your kind intentions, City Lord. Rome was a little surprised, but he still cupped his fists. Because Chaos City has a rule that carriages are not allowed to enter the city at night, we can only invite Master Rome's carriage into the city first. The carriages will enter the city tomorrow morning. Dicus smiled, and made an inviting gesture. It's indeed a good thing to be able to have a good night's sleep. Rome smiled as he got into the carriage. The coachman quickly drove the carriage into the city. Master Rome. Could it be that legendary blacksmith from Isin Castle? It can't be, right? I heard that he hasn't left Isin Castle for hundreds of years. How could he appear in Chaos City? Maybe the city lord invited him. That's why he specially sent someone out of the city to welcome him. All the merchants were envious when they saw that. They were guessing who was sitting in that carriage that could make the city lord's castle come out of the city to welcome him. However, no one tried to break the rules. Master Rome, this is your first time in Chaos City. I'll have to trouble you to stay at the city lord's castle for the night. Someone will bring you to find a suitable place to stay tomorrow morning. Dicus arranged accommodation for Rome and the others, and prepared to leave. Thank you. But, young friend, I have something to ask you, Rome said. Please go ahead. Have you heard of a restaurant called Mamie's in Chaos City? The one whose boss is Meg. Would you like to have your meal now? Mamie's has already closed for business. I'm afraid you won't be able to eat anything tonight. However, I can get the kitchen to prepare some food for you. Dicus looked at Rome with surprise. He didn't expect Mamie's to be so famous that even Master Rome had heard of it. The city lord valued this legendary blacksmith who had forged so many amazing weapons. However, he was also a little puzzled as to why Master Rome, who had never left Isen Castle, would choose Chaos City and move his workshop here. However, no matter what, this was a good thing for Chaos City. The arrival of a legendary blacksmith could attract a sizable group of powerhouses. Even though they were here to obtain the weapons personally forged by the blacksmith, since they were living in Chaos City, they naturally became a part of Chaos City's power, and indirectly increased Chaos City's power. It's all right. Since it's already closed for business, let's go tomorrow. Rome waved his hand with a smile and said, "We've already had our dinner. There's no need for the trouble. No pop-up window." Chapter 1649. I heard Master Rome has come to Chaos City. The Isen Castle branch received a huge sum of money some time ago. It was deposited by Master Rome. I heard he left Isen Castle long ago, but I didn't expect him to come to Chaos City. Hill and Ian sat opposite each other for breakfast as they chatted. Interesting. I wonder if it's the city lord's castle's doing that could make this old antique leave the castle that he had been holed up in for hundreds of years to spend his old age here, Ian said with a smile as he took a bite of the white egg. Didn't you have some dealings with him when you were young? He's not someone the city lord's castle can move. Back then, the king of the Roth Empire offered something the city lord's castle couldn't afford. Hill used a silk handkerchief to wipe his mouth. Ian stroked his chin with a puzzled expression and said, "That's exactly what I'm curious about. What made him deposit all the money in the warehouse, and then come all the way to Chaos City?" "If I didn't remember wrongly, the latest weapon that he forged should be Boss Mag's cleaver," Shear said. "Cleaver? Could he be here for Amy's?" Ian said with surprise. However, he shook his head and said, "I don't think so. He's not particular about food. Perhaps you can ask him this question yourself. He shouldn't have many acquaintances in Chaos City." Hill stood up and left. "That's a good suggestion. Although the deal back then didn't work out, at least I'm familiar with him." Ian ate the remaining half of the egg slowly before instructing, "Prepare the carriage. We're going to the city lord's castle." "Master, where should we set up our new workshop?" Joey asked curiously as he helped Rome put on his coat. Joss was also looking at Master Rome expectantly. Although they were far away from Isen Castle, they were still blacksmiths as long as they had a workshop. "Let's think about this after we have our meal," Rome said nonchalantly as he walked out. "Do we need to meet up with the convoy?" Joey asked again. "I'll leave it to you. Someone from the mayor's palace will take you there. Once I've confirmed the location of the workshop, you can bring the equipment to the new place," Rome said to Joey. "Yes." Joey nodded and left quickly. "Master, the city lord mansion has prepared breakfast for us," Joss said. "No need. Let's go straight to Mamie's for breakfast." Rome shook her head and walked straight to the door. "Good morning, Master Rome. Are you heading to Amy's?" Dicus asked with a smile when he saw Rome walking out of the courtyard. "Yes." Rome nodded. "Then I'll take you there. I'm a regular at Amy's, and I haven't had breakfast yet," Dicus said with a smile. "Then I'll have to trouble you." Rome didn't refuse. Besides, it would be troublesome to ask someone for directions. However, it seemed that Mamie's was really famous. Even a random worker from the mayor's palace was a regular at the restaurant. The three of them walked out of the mayor's palace and were about to get into the carriage when a luxurious black carriage stopped in front of the mayor's palace. The coachman opened the door and Ian walked out. He looked at Rome and the others who were about to get into the carriage and smiled. "Master Rome, are you going out?" "You are." Rome looked back at Ian and thought for a while. His eyes lit up. You're the scammer. How can you say that? I'm the owner of a money house. Ian's face darkened. He didn't expect Rome to think that he was a scammer. At his level, there was no need for him to make friends with any master blacksmiths. He didn't lack anything, and he didn't need a legendary weapon. That thing wasn't as attractive to him as a high-quality fishing rod. It was just that he was getting old, and there were fewer and fewer old friends. He had spent some time at Isen Castle when he opened up the market, and an old friend came to visit, so he wanted to meet him. That's what everyone called you back then. I just didn't expect to put my money in your money house now. Rome smiled. The last time he saw Ian was over 40 years ago. He was still quite young back then. In order to make him deposit his money in his money house, he stood guard outside the forge almost every day. He was even more attentive than those who came to ask for weapons, and left a deep impression on him. Decades passed in the blink of an eye, and he had become the owner of the largest money house on the Norland continent. He had also become a little old man. I didn't expect that I would have to wait for my granddaughter to complete this task. Ian shrugged. He couldn't help but smile when he thought of the past. He looked at Rome and said, Master, where are you going? It's rare for us to meet. Why don't we have a cup of tea together? Rome directly boarded the horse-drawn carriage, and bluntly said, There's no need for tea this early in the morning. I'm going to Mamie's for breakfast, and I have to book a place for the forge after that. I don't have time for tea. Then we'll take our leave, Mr. Ian, Dykes said with a smile. He boarded the horse-drawn carriage, and instructed the coachman to go to Mamie's. He's in such a hurry to go to Mamie's for breakfast this early in the morning. Don't tell me he's really here because of that Meg brat. Ian looked on with surprise as the horse-drawn carriage disappeared into the distance. He didn't expect his invitation to be rejected. He was still thinking of recommending a few good shops to Rome because of their old friendship. Let's go to Mamie's and have a look. Ian waved his hand. Master, didn't you already have breakfast this morning? The butler standing behind him asked. I'm only 70% full. Let's go and see what kind of magic this Mamie's has that could make this old fellow Rome move all the way here. Ian turned and boarded the horse-drawn carriage. Let's go to Mamie's, the butler instructed the coachman before entering the carriage and closing the door. Is Master Rome an old acquaintance of Mr. Mac? Dykes asked Rome curiously in the horse-drawn carriage. We've met at Isen Castle. I've eaten his dishes, Rome answered. It's indeed very difficult to put down Mr. Mac's dishes after eating them. Yes. That steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers is the most delicious food I've ever eaten. Rome nodded with a smile. He couldn't help feeling a little excited at the thought of being able to eat it again soon. Dykes looked at Rome, and could vaguely guess the reason why Rome moved his workshop all the way to Chaos City. Mr. Mac was really a rare talent. He managed to attract such a great blacksmith to Chaos City with just a steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers. The horse-drawn carriage stopped. Dykes lifted the curtain and took a look. He stood up and said, We've arrived at Mamie's. Rome alighted too. When he saw the long line of people at the entrance of the restaurant, he couldn't help but ask in surprise, So many people? We're considered early. This line will stretch all the way to the square, Dykes said with a smile. No pop-up window. Chapter 1650. Seems like it's not easy to get a meal. Rome shook his head with a smile. However, he still followed Dykes to the back of the line. Although Meg said that he could look for him directly when he reached Chaos City, he didn't want to break the rules and make things difficult for Meg since everyone was lining up. Master Rome, what did you eat from Mr. Mac? Dykes asked curiously as he stood behind Rome. Steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers, Rome replied without hesitation. If it's steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers, I'm afraid we won't be able to eat it this morning, Dicus said regretfully. Why? Mamie's only provides specific breakfasts during their opening hours. They don't provide food with strong flavors or food that takes a long time to prepare, including steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers, Dicus explained. I see. Rome pondered after hearing that. He didn't expect to not be able to eat the steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers that he had been craving for so early in the morning. What a pity. Mr. Mac is a stickler for the rules. Even I can't persuade him to make steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers for you. However, Mamie's breakfast is equally amazing. Whether it's soy milk with youtiao, tofu pudding with yangzhou fried rice, or a bowl of congee with pork and century egg that warms your stomach, you will be satisfied for the entire morning, Dicus recommended with a smile. Although the names sound a little weird, they seem pretty good. Let's try the other dishes this morning. Rome nodded. Actually, he didn't feel like eating steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers early in the morning. He would come back for steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers and a bottle of wine after he was done with his business. That would be perfect. Joss stood behind the two of them. He looked at the beautiful restaurant in front of him, and then at the growing line behind him. He couldn't help but feel a little speechless. He didn't expect Mr. Meg's restaurant to be so famous that so many people were willing to line up for breakfast so early in the morning. Not long after, a black horse-drawn carriage stopped in front of Mamie's. Master, we're here at Mamie's. The steward lifted the curtain and took a look. He said hesitantly, however, there seems to be a lot of people waiting in line. If we wait in line, I don't know when we'll be able to wait. So many people. Won't we have to wait for God knows how long? En lifted the curtain to take a look and couldn't help but be speechless. He quickly lowered the curtain and said, let's go back. It's better to go fishing than to wait in line here. Yes. The butler nodded and instructed the coachman to return home. No one noticed that such a carriage had paused for a moment and then left. Not long after, the door of the restaurant opened, and Meg walked out, smiling as he welcomed the guests. Meg's gaze followed the line habitually, and landed on Rom. He couldn't help but be surprised. However, he didn't lose his composure, and continued to greet the customers with a smile. Master Rome, I didn't expect you to really come, Meg said with a smile as he looked at the Rome who had come with the team. If I didn't come, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to eat that delicious steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers for the rest of my life. Rome looked at Meg with a smile, and said, no one else in this world can make such delicious food. If it's steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers, this morning, I know. I'll come back for steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers at night. I'll just have something simple for breakfast. I still have to find a place to set up the forge later, Rome said with a smile. He didn't block the door, and walked straight in. The city lord asked me to help Master Rome set up the forge, Dicus explained to Meg with a smile before following Rome into the restaurant. Joss bowed respectfully to Meg, and quickly followed behind. If it wasn't for this man, he wouldn't be the master's disciple anymore, and wouldn't be able to follow him to Chaos City to learn his superb forging skills. Meg smiled. Master Rome was a transparent person, and didn't want to trouble others at all. Master Rome ordered a bowl of congee with pork and century egg, and finished it with satisfaction. He ordered another bowl, and walked into the kitchen before he left. He gave Meg a thumbs up, and praised, young friend, your culinary skills are indeed extraordinary. I'm afraid I'll be a regular at your restaurant in the future. Of course I'll welcome Master Rome if you're willing to come, Meg said with a smile as he watched the group of people leave. Could that be the legendary blacksmith, Master Rome? I heard from the caravan that entered the city today that Master Rome had indeed come to Chaos City, but I didn't expect him to come to Mamie's for breakfast so early in the morning. Yes. Seems like he's quite close to Mr. Mac. Could it be that he moved the forge to Chaos City because of Mr. Mac? If it's me, it's really possible. The customers began to discuss softly as they watched Master Rome leave. As the most famous legendary blacksmith on the Norland continent, Master Rome, who had personally forged a series of famous swords such as the Tian-Du sword, would always be the center of attention. In the past few years, Master Rome had suddenly gone silent, and locked himself in his forge, refusing to see any customers. There was also a long period of time when he didn't produce any new products, and there were even rumors that he had stopped working. However, no one expected him to suddenly announce that he was leaving Isen Castle, and moving his forge to Chaos City. Furthermore, there were rumors that his latest product was actually a cleaver called Fathead Fish. Of course, that was just a rumor. No one believed that Master Rome would forge a cleaver for others. That was a job that only roadside blacksmiths would take on. It didn't match Master Rome's status at all. Today, everyone could be sure of one thing. Master Rome had indeed come to Chaos City, and he seemed to be in a good state of mind. Perhaps they would hear about the news of another legendary weapon being born soon. After the morning operating hours, Mia and the rest went to the ice cream shop. Meg opened the door, and Harris, who was waiting outside, walked in with Chapman with a smile. He looked at Meg and asked, "Master, are we learning Buddha jumps over the wall today?" "No." Meg rolled his eyes. "I've told you 100 times. Even if you learn it, you won't be able to find all the ingredients." "Master, you're belittling me. I'm not a famous chef, after all. Even if I don't have all the ingredients, I can still find substitutes," Harris said with a smile. "If it could be substituted so easily, then it wouldn't be Buddha jumps over the wall." Meg glanced at Harris's thick hair. At the same time that it lost its original flavor, it also lost its special effects. "If it can't prevent hair loss, I don't have to learn it." Harris fiddled with his hair, and proudly said, "Look at my hair. Duong. It's black and shiny." "Oh, yes. Master Rome has come to Chaos City. Aren't you old acquaintances with him?" Meg asked casually as he fiddled with the grill at the side. No pop-up window. Chapter 1651. What did you say? Who's here? Harris was taken aback as he stared at Meg in disbelief. "Isen Castle's Master Rome," Meg said. "He had his breakfast in the restaurant this morning." "How is that possible?" "That fellow is the kind of person who could stay in the workshop for his entire life." Harris's eyes widened in shock. "Maybe the steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers is too delicious," Meg said calmly. "You mean, he was attracted by the steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers you made? He actually gave up his insistence and belief as a homebody, and came all the way to Chaos City for a fish head?" Harris stared at Meg in disbelief. "Isn't the charm of a fish head enough?" Meg asked Harris. Harris thought about it seriously, and nodded. "It's enough. Wasn't he staying in Chaos City just because of a dish?" It sounded incredible, but it also made sense. "Let's learn how to roast beef kebabs today. The simplest kebabs." Meg took out a whole piece of beef and a bunch of bamboo skewers from the fridge, and placed them on the chopping table. "Let's start from cutting the meat and skewering the meat. Roasting meat is my specialty. I'll definitely be able to pick it up quickly," Harris said confidently. Chapman stood at the side and watched seriously like a good student. "Roasting meat is a technical job. You can only roast meat to your satisfaction if you control the heat well. The preparation of the ingredients is also very important. This piece of beef we chose. Meg began teaching seriously. Harris and Chapman were very good disciples. They had a solid foundation in culinary skills, and were very sincere and serious when it came to cooking. Therefore, apart from the husband and wife long slice, Meg also planned to teach them how to roast beef kebabs. The supper world didn't have roast kebabs, so it was rather lonely and boring. Meg didn't have the ability to let more people eat roast kebabs at the moment, so Harris, who liked to travel and spar with others, was obviously a good propagator. Perhaps he could let roast kebabs gain a foothold in the supper world of the Norland continent through him. Money was endless, and it wasn't easy to add some novel dishes to a world's food and beverage structure and make them popular. He had never said that his dishes were not to be imitated in Chaos City, but none of the restaurants in the Aden Square that were imitating his dishes were still doing well after the novelty period. Therefore, a professional apprentice was also very important. Master, don't worry. What we have learned will never be taught to a third person. We will only learn it for ourselves. Harris looked at Meg and promised solemnly. He was rather touched by Meg's straightforwardness and unconditional dedication. Even a father and son might not be willing to share a recipe with each other for something as private as a recipe, let alone two complete strangers. Yet, he was willing to share everything with them just because of a joking bet. He didn't hide anything from them at all. This kind of character and trust made him admire Meg from the bottom of his heart. He deserved to be called master. Meg shook his head, and said, "You don't have to keep it a secret for me. I think the standard of the culinary world is too low now. I hope you can help me spread the word about these two dishes, and raise the standard of the culinary world a little." Harris was stunned. He looked at Meg, who was calm and didn't seem to be joking, and sighed. This is the loneliness of a powerhouse. I once had this feeling too, but I didn't expect to meet Master one day. Don't worry. I will teach them everywhere I go in the future, and let these two dishes spread. You have to learn it first. Meg glanced at Harris with a smile, and said, "You still don't need me to give you some pointers this time." No. A qualified student wouldn't ask a teacher for pointers before trying it himself. Although it's foolproof, he would lose the chance to find out his shortcomings and improve himself. Harris rejected decisively. Chapman, who was at the side, hesitated for a while. He also looked at Meg and said, "Grandmaster, I also want to try it myself this time." "All right, then you guys go ahead. I'm going out for a while." Meg removed his apron, took a few kebabs that were already grilled, and walked out of the door. "Why don't you give me any pointers this time, too?" Harris asked Chapman with a smile. "Master is right. Shortcuts won't allow a chef to improve. Things that go straight into the brain and things that come out by thinking are different. This is what you taught me since I was young," Chapman said seriously. "All right, then let's start cutting the meat." Harris took out a knife and started cutting the meat seriously. "Where are you researching the blueprints?" Meg took the kebabs into the smithy next door. Mobai, Lulu, and Hannah were sitting around a small table and discussing the blueprint seriously. "Yes, boss. Mobai's boss is really awesome. The first part is almost done." Hannah looked up. There were 3 streaks of charcoal ash on her face, making her look like a disfigured kitten. "Mr. Mac." Mobai also looked at Meg and greeted him with a smile. "I grilled some kebabs. Have some before you continue." Meg passed the kebabs in his hand over. There were 2 kebabs for each of them, and it was just right. "Boss, let me show you the machine." Hannah chewed on the kebabs as she led Meg into the smithy next door. Hannah pointed at a row of rather large parts in the corner of the smithy, and said, "Look, these parts are all done. Now we're only missing the main body of the brewing machine." Mobai's boss said that thing is too big, and this smithy isn't big enough. He has to find a few blacksmiths from his friend's place to do it together. The efficiency is not bad, and the precision is not bad. It's far better than your original batch of old machines. Meg squatted down to check those parts. He couldn't help but praise Mobai's craftsmanship. Although it was purely handmade, the precision of these parts was extremely high. It was more than enough to make wine. He was indeed a ruthless person who could make his own cannons. Hannah said with a serious face, "I made it myself. Although it looks a little ugly, I still used it to make high-quality rum. That's a good machine." "Good, good, good. I know you're great." Meg smiled. It seemed that the brewing factory could start construction at the same time. After it was built, the machine would enter the factory, and they could start mass-producing rum. He could already imagine what kind of investment it would be to own a top-notch rum factory and get a top-notch brand. "You guys continue with your work. I'm going to bask in the sun." Meg didn't stay for long. He went out of the smithy and saw Julian combing Charcoal's few remaining feathers at the entrance of the magic potion shop next door. He smiled and greeted, "Master Julian, you're combing Charcoal's feathers." Charcoal raised its neck in satisfaction, enjoying the feeling of the fine comb sliding across its body. "Comb it neatly. Amy will burn more easily," Julian replied with a hoarse voice. "Ha!" Charcoal's body stiffened and fell in the cage. No pop-up window. Chapter 1652. System, I completed the rum mission before, didn't I get the opportunity to learn 2 kinds of wine? Meg returned to his restaurant and set up a recliner at the door to bask in the sun while asking in his heart. "The reward has been issued for a long time. Please receive it as soon as possible." The system replied. Meg looked at the various kinds of wine in his mind and asked curiously, "Whiskey is also known as the water of life. In this world, what is the relationship between this water of life and the water of life of the elves? The specific effect, please test it yourself after the host draws." The system leisurely said. Meg frowned and thought for a moment, then said, "Well, then I want a Scotch whiskey and a Moutai." Ding! The Scotch whiskey and Moutai recipes have been issued successfully. The system prompt sounded, and 2 glittering experience bags appeared in Meg's mind, with whiskey and Moutai written on them. One was the ancestor of whiskey, and the other was the model of China's Moutai-flavored liquor. Coupled with the existing beer in the restaurant and the rum that will be opened in the factory, Mimi's drinks could be considered complete. It was a pity that the system did not open the right to sell the wine to him, otherwise, just the quality of the wine that crushed Romani Conti could easily be sold at a high price. Of course, whether the Moutai-flavored liquor that was popular on the tables of China's people would be liked in this world was still unknown. Interesting, I'll learn whiskey tonight and see if the water of life created by the British gentleman is worthy of this name. Meg's mouth slightly raised. He still had some expectations for the country that was full of bald men and warm-hearted gentlemen. With nothing to do, Meg directly ate the whiskey and Moutai experience bags and digested them with his eyes closed for half an hour. When he opened his eyes again, Meg felt that he was now a master brewer, the invincible kind. It seems that the scale of this winery can be expanded and directly mass-produce the 4 kinds of wine. Meg touched his chin and pondered. Dwarves loved wine, demons loved wine, orcs loved wine, humans loved wine. Even the elves had a lot of good wine. The market for this business could be said to be huge. However, so far, there were only a few wines that were slightly famous in the small circle. There were almost no famous wines that were both produced and famous. According to the customers' positive comments on beer and rum, it would definitely not be a flop after mass production. As long as the production could keep up and the market was expanded, it was very likely that it would become a world-class famous wine. The venue can be negotiated with the city lord's manor. As for the manpower, the night elves still have more than 20,000 free laborers. We can arrange for them to be employed. Meg calculated that this matter could be discussed at length. It seemed inevitable that he would stay up late to draw the design. Crassus and Julian planned to explore the Thunderstorm Mountains at night. Do you want to come along? Meg was still pondering when Irina's voice suddenly sounded from the side. Did something happen over there? Meg opened his eyes and turned to look at Irina, who had appeared out of nowhere. Irina had already told him that there might be an evil god suppressed under the Thunderstorm Mountains. What was worse was that the seal was already damaged, and the evil god's aura was starting to leak out. It was very likely that it would attract the evil god's believers and descendants. The situation is unknown. It is said that a mysterious person appeared near the Thunderstorm Mountains recently. They are worried that someone will discover the seal and destroy it to release the evil god underground. So, they plan to go and take a look personally. Then why do they want to go at night? There is news that there will be an anomaly in the Thunderstorm Mountains at night recently. So, they plan to take a look at what that anomaly is about, Irina explained. Then I will go together. Meg nodded. The shadow of the Great Old Ones was still looming over him. Once the evil god broke the seal, the consequences would be irreversible. The Norland continent was not ready to welcome the evil god yet. All right. Irina nodded. She glanced in the direction of the magic potion shop, and chuckled. I saw Amy's recent homework. The things that Crassus and Julian didn't reach a consensus on me back then have already started to develop well with Amy. Cultivating both ice and fire at the same time, with both close combat and long-range attacks. Wouldn't this be too bad for Amy? Meg asked Irina. He wasn't sure if it was right for Amy to be apprenticed to both Crassus and Julian at the same time for Amy. It wouldn't be good if we missed such an opportunity. Irina curled her lips slightly and said, This is our daughter. She has inherited my magic talent and your close combat talent. If she can be taught by both of them at the same time, her future will be immeasurable. Meg smiled when he heard that. Since Irina had said so, he didn't have to worry anymore. Also, I am considering letting her start learning swordsmanship from you when she is 5 years old, Irina said to Meg. Let a magic caster learn swordsmanship. Meg looked at Irina with a hint of surprise on his face. Even though he did teach her some basic swordsmanship from time to time, that was only to strengthen her body. After seeing how talented she was in magic, he had already given up on the idea of grooming her into a new generation of dragon slayers. Magic is just on the surface. Knights are justice. Isn't that what you told me back then? Irina asked Meg. That sounds reasonable. Meg pondered and said, If Amy wants to learn, I will work hard to groom her into an outstanding knight. You have to teach her. Irina's expression became serious. We don't know what the future will be like, and we don't have the confidence to destroy all the evil gods or seal them again. With one more ability, she will have more ability to survive in this world than others. Meg looked at Irina and was silent for a while. Then, he nodded and said, Okay, I will make her an outstanding dragon-slaying knight. She is my daughter. She can do it. My dream is to be a magic caster with a sword. If it weren't for my lack of talent, hee. Irina pursed her lips, and then said expectantly, Say, if you take out your magic caster's staff, and the enemy opposite you is waiting for you to cast a spell, but he sees you approaching quickly and is surprised that you are a close combat magic caster. In the end, you pull out a sword from your magic caster's staff and stab him. Tell me, isn't that awesome? Meg thought about that scene seriously and frowned. It feels like a useless act of confusion. It was clearly a matter that could be solved with a fireball, but with this set, it became a little complicated. No, it is to make your enemy never guess what you are going to do next. This way, you will always be in an invincible position. Irina shook her head. This is the reason why you have hundreds of chairs in your space. Chapter 1653. Meg listened to Irina's advice and began to seriously think about how to develop Amy into a female knight. This was a very challenging task. Amy was not a blank piece of paper. She was not even 5 years old, but she was already a level 7 magician with both ice and fire elements, and was also a close combat magician. Crassus's close combat magic relied on powerful magic, which could suddenly explode in a very short distance to produce terrifying power. For example, a headshot with a magician's staff, which scored full marks for the aesthetics of violence and had a great deterrent effect. However, in the eyes of a master swordsman like Meg, it was like a farmer's trick. When he raised his staff, his sword could already find countless flaws. With Crassus's strength, he needed to consider whether his opponent would be able to withstand this blow. However, Amy was still growing, and this problem would cause her to be at a disadvantage when she encountered a strong opponent or a high-level opponent. Of course, transforming magic into a close combat attack was a very great invention, and Amy had learned it very well. Meg did not want to completely deny Amy's ability. Instead, he wanted her to learn a more complete knight's attack method based on her current close combat magic ability. She could make use of the powerful burst of close combat magic to make her attacks more threatening. To be specific, he wanted her to be a magician with superb swordsmanship. This should be an unprecedented configuration, and just thinking about it made Meg excited. If there's a chance, I still have to talk to Master Crassus. I must have a deeper understanding of close combat magic to find a more suitable training method for Amy. Meg touched his chin. At noon, Rome came early again. During this time, Rome had started to forget things again. Although it was not to the extent that it affected his daily life, the feeling of his efficiency of thinking decreased still made him feel uncomfortable. The delicious taste of the steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers was unforgettable, but what really concerned Rome was its special effect of clearing one's mind. He didn't have much time left, so he needed a clear mind so that he could forge a true divine weapon that surpassed all the previous weapons in this final period of time. He had spent his entire life on the forging table, and his ideal home was also on the forging table. Young Master Cyril, that's Master Rome over there. He's the best blacksmith on the Norland continent. If we can hire him as our master blacksmith, even if it's just in name, we'll definitely become the best blacksmith shop on the Norland continent. We won't have to worry about orders anymore. A man with a protruding mouth and monkey-like cheeks pointed at Rome in a horse-drawn carriage. Then it's him. No matter what price I have to pay, I want him to join our smithy. Cyril narrowed his eyes at Rome and sneered, "This time, I'll make Gloria taste defeat and take back everything she took from me." You should be mentally prepared for a master of this level. The man beside him reminded him. How much will it cost? Cyril frowned. Recently, he had failed to compete with Gloria. His status in the family had been declining, and the money he could control was getting more and more limited. Probably. That man thought seriously for a while, and said with certainty, 1 million copper coins, 1 million copper coins. Cyril frowned. That was his usual monthly allowance, but recently, he had stuffed a lot of money into the blacksmith shop's account to make it look better. If he wanted to take out another 1 million copper coins, he would have to borrow some from his friends. Young master, this is a real master. The kind that's extremely famous. This investment is definitely worth it, that man encouraged. All right, then let's go meet this master. Cyril nodded. He lifted the curtain and got out of the horse-drawn carriage. He tidied his clothes, and walked towards Rome in the queue. Hello, I'm Cyril. Cyril came to Rome's side, and looked at him with his chin slightly raised. Rome glanced at him, and nodded slightly. It seemed that those people who were here to ask for weapons had followed him to Chaos City. That's your reaction when you hear my name? Cyril frowned. He didn't expect this old man to be so tactless. This is young Master Cyril from family Moritan, the man behind him quickly introduced. Rome nodded politely again, and then turned to look in the direction of the restaurant's entrance. Among the people who had asked him to forge weapons over the years, there was no lack of princes and ministers from various clans. He couldn't remember the young masters of certain clans. The people around the queue looked over. Many of them recognized Cyril, and knew that he was the young master of family Moritan. Some of them also recognized Rome. Although this legendary blacksmith didn't show his face much, he was obviously more famous than Cyril, who was just a rich second-generation rich kid. Everyone was curious as to why Cyril would look for Master Rome. He wasn't someone who brandished knives and spears, and didn't look like he was going to ask Master Rome to forge weapons for him. Cyril couldn't quite keep his composure. He was one of the most important figures in Chaos City, yet he was being ignored by a dwarven blacksmith in front of so many people. Young master, bear with it for a while. The blacksmith shop's performance is more important. That man quickly tugged at Cyril's sleeve, and reminded him softly. He was afraid that Cyril would be impulsive and mess things up. Cyril thought of his 3-month agreement with Gloria, and took a few deep breaths to calm himself down. He looked at Rome, and said as calmly as possible, Master Rome, right? I want to talk to you about a business deal. Rome looked up at Cyril in surprise, and shook his head. I don't do business. This is not a small business deal. As long as it works out, I guarantee you a comfortable life in Chaos City. Cyril stretched out a finger, and smilingly said, a business deal of 1 million copper coins, 1 million copper coins. And it's copper coins. Rome frowned slightly as he sized up Cyril. Is this fellow here to pick a fight with me? 1 million copper coins to talk to Master Rome about a business deal. TSK. I don't know if I should say that the ignorant are fearless, or that I should praise him for being stupid. I heard that the last demon ancestor who took a saber from Master Rome paid about 10 million dragon coins and a pile of top-grade forging materials. If this business deal works out, then this young Master Cyril will become a god. Do you think he's the same as the master? Some of the customers in the line couldn't help but laugh when they heard that. You're scared of 1 million, right? Cyril, on the other hand, was rather satisfied with Rome's reaction. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, but he was a little regretful in his heart. He should have mentioned 500,000 to test the waters. Perhaps he could have saved some money. I'm just an iron fool who knows how to forge. Rome shook his head with a smile. I can't afford to talk about 1 million copper coins. No pop-up window. Chapter 1654. Cyril looked at Rome with a frown. Is he really an idiot? He doesn't even want 1 million. Master Rome, young Master Cyril would like to invite you to join his blacksmith shop. As long as you are willing, you will be paid 1 million copper coins. All you have to do is sit in the blacksmith shop every day. What an easy job, the middle-aged man said to Rome with a smile. He didn't make it into the city before sunset last night. He happened to see people from the city lord's castle coming out of the city to welcome Rome into the city. He heard some rumors about Master Rome from a few peddlers, so he went to look for Cyril early in the morning. After asking around, he finally found him outside Mamie's at noon. He only knew that Rome should be a very good blacksmith, but he didn't know how good he was. However, 1 million copper coins was not a small sum, not to mention a lot for a blacksmith. Master Rome has rejected your invitation. Please don't disturb him, Joss said with a serious expression as he stepped forward. Joey also looked at Cyril and his follower as if he were looking at a fool. 1,000,000 copper coins. Which person who came to ask a master to forge a weapon only had 1,000,000 copper coins in his pocket? He would be too embarrassed to ask, let alone hire a master to work in the blacksmith shop. Back then, the emperor of the Roth Empire wanted to hire a master, but he still couldn't hire a master Rome even after offering a noble title and a huge sum of money. Those who knew about Rome's identity looked at Cyril with similar expressions. I'm afraid he's an idiot, right? Family Moreton chose such a person as their heir. Harrison whispered with raised eyebrows. Hee, you don't know this, do you? President Jeffrey chose the eldest son, Lance, as his heir. This second young master was basically left alone. Later, Lance suddenly gave up business to become a teacher, so the second young master had no choice but to be the heir. In order to become a teacher, Lance almost fell out with President Jeffrey. This second young master can become the future head of the family even without doing anything. No one can shake his position, so he went from bad to worse and is still the same as before. This level of behavior is already considered normal. George chuckled. However, he is not so proud now. I heard that the president has started to consider his eldest granddaughter as the heir. Could it be that the Moreton family is also going to have a Hill Buffett? Harrison exclaimed. That's hard to say. If I were President George, even a pig would be better than this young master. At least a pig is not that stupid, George said with a chuckle. Cyril saw that Rome was ignoring him. How dare a dwarf talk to him in such an arrogant tone? His face darkened, and he shouted, Who do you think you are? How dare you talk to me like that? Joss glowered at Cyril with a cold expression. Even though he was only as tall as Cyril's waist, as a dwarven blacksmith who had grown up in a blacksmith's shop, he wasn't fearful of such a frail human. In fact, he felt like he could even take on 10 of them. Of course, most importantly, he would not allow anyone to humiliate Master Rome. Joey had the same expression. He even gripped the heavy hammer on his back. It seems that Gloria has a good chance of winning. In front of the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling window, Meg looked at the scene outside with a smile. He was not worried at all that Master Rome would be humiliated by Cyril. After all, Dicus was still there. If Master Rome was angered by Cyril and left, Castellan Michael would probably tear him apart. The guests who knew Rome's status looked at Cyril with pity. If this matter spread to the ears of those who were queuing up to ask Master Rome to forge weapons for them, Cyril would probably become a rare item used to curry favor with Master Rome. The funniest thing was that this fellow had no idea. The man who brought Cyril here saw Cyril's anger, and knew that this business deal was not going to go through. If he was not careful, he might even offend Cyril. He rolled his eyes, and put on an angry expression. He pointed at Joss' face, and scolded, You shameless thing. I think you must be tired of living. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Crack. A crisp sound rang out. Joey let go of that man's broken finger, and continued to stand in front of Master Rome. Cyril jumped back. He glanced at that man's dangling finger, and his eyelids twitched. However, this was Chaos City, after all. He regained his confidence, and said in a low voice, How dare you hit my man? Today, right at this moment, Dicus, who was standing behind, walked over, and said to Cyril, Cyril, Master Rome is the city lord's distinguished guest. You'd better show some respect. So it's you, Master Dicus. I didn't expect you to be here too. Cyril faltered slightly at the sight of Dicus. He was quite familiar with this official from the city lord's castle. Furthermore, Cyril had specifically warned him that Dicus was a trusted aide of the city lord, and that he couldn't afford to offend him. However, he quickly came back to his senses, and looked at Dicus with surprise. He then turned to Master Rome, and asked, "You said he's the city lord's distinguished guest?" Master Rome is the most renowned blacksmith on the Norland continent. No matter where he goes, he'll always be a distinguished guest, Dicus said in a low voice. He looked at Cyril with a resigned expression, and his heart ached for Geoffrey for a second. How did he have such a son? Cyril's eyelids began to twitch when he heard that. He had thought this was just a slightly impressive dwarven blacksmith, but he didn't expect this fellow to have the city lord's castle's backing. Bowen and his son were still locked up in Bowtie prison. Previously, he had tried to take advantage of Bennett's arrest to enter Chaos City's underground world, but he was so shocked that he sent that fair-weather friend of his to the city lord's castle overnight. That was how he didn't get beaten to death by his father. However, he didn't expect to offend the city lord's distinguished guest. I see. I was too presumptuous earlier. Seems like Master Rome has no intention of becoming my blacksmith's senior consultant. Then, I won't impose on you any longer. Goodbye. Cyril bade farewell, and immediately turned to leave. He only realized now that he was the real fool. Dicus looked at Rome apologetically, and said, "I'm sorry, Master Rome. This person, it's all right. It's inevitable to meet some strange people. If you argue with them, you'll be no different from them." Rome shook his head with a smile. Dicus also smiled when he heard that. A master's realm was indeed not something that ordinary people could compare to. "You idiot. Do you know that you almost got me killed?" After returning to the horse-drawn carriage, Cyril kicked over the man who was covering his hand as he followed Cyril into the horse-drawn carriage. "I know my mistake. I know my mistake." That man covered his hand with an aggrieved expression as he sat in a corner. His body was trembling slightly from fear. Chapter 1655. Smack. Idiot. Geoffrey glared at Cyril, who was standing there with his hands covering his face. He was so angry that his beard curled up. "Father. I didn't do anything," Cyril said softly. He didn't expect to be called here by his father as soon as he reached home. He had just met his father, and he had already been slapped. Could it be that his father had already heard about what happened today? "You didn't do anything. You used 1,000,000 copper coins to get Master Rome to watch over your blacksmith shop for you. How is that not doing anything?" Geoffrey was so angry that he laughed. Cyril glanced at Geoffrey, and whispered, "I didn't succeed, and I didn't do anything to him. Don't you always say that you have to be bold when doing business? I just didn't succeed in this deal." Cyril glanced at Geoffrey, and whispered, "Shut up, you idiot." Geoffrey slapped Cyril's face again. He was so angry that his hands were shaking. How did I give birth to such an idiot like you?" Cyril covered his face with his hands, and looked at Geoffrey with fear. He hadn't seen his father lose his composure like this for a long time. "Do you know what kind of existence this Master Rome is? Alex Dragonslayer's Tian-Du sword was forged by him. The Roth Empire's King's sword was forged by him. The chief of the August tribe, Oster's saber was forged by him. 5 of the top 10 weapons on the Norland continent's weapon rankings were forged by him. The other 5 are almost all legendary weapons from various tribes. Do you know how many 10th tier powerhouses have queued up to ask him to forge weapons for them, but he rejected them? If they knew that an idiot like you had angered him, as long as it makes Master Rome happy, they would break down the manor's door tonight, twist your head off, and send it to Master Rome." Geoffrey panted, and looked at Cyril with disappointment. "Do you think you're talking about a deal? What the hell did you do? You made your own head into a gift." Plop. Cyril's legs went soft, and he knelt in front of Geoffrey. His face was pale and bloodless. He originally thought that he had only caused a small trouble and suffered a little loss, but he did not expect that it would be such a terrible disaster. "Father, save me. Father, save me." Cyril knelt in front of Geoffrey and begged in fear. Just the thought of a group of 10th-tier powerhouses lining up to take his head was terrifying. "You've caused such trouble. Even I can't protect you." Geoffrey pulled back his leg that Cyril was hugging. Then what should I do? Wait at home for them to kill me? No, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. Cyril shook his head and cried. You can only avoid this disaster if you get Master Rome's forgiveness, and you have to do it before daybreak. Geoffrey's expression had gradually calmed down, and he looked coldly at Cyril. If you don't handle this well, it won't just be a disaster for you, but also for our family Moreton. If you're lucky enough to survive, I'll expel you from the family. Yes. Yes. I'll go and apologize to him, I'll go right now. Cyril crawled up from the ground and scrambled toward the door. If he were to be expelled from the family, then he would really have nothing left. You idiot, do you know where to find Master Rome? Do you know how to ask for his forgiveness? Geoffrey's voice sounded. Cyril stopped in his tracks. He'd met Master Rome at noon at Mama's, but he really didn't know where he was now, and he didn't know how to ask for his forgiveness. He probably had to kneel in front of him, kowtow a few times, and beg for forgiveness with tears streaming down his face. He had breakfast and lunch at Mama's today. If nothing goes wrong, he should be at Mama's again tonight. Secondly, he hates pestering people the most. You'd better find someone he trusts to speak up for you, Geoffrey said calmly. Someone he trusts. Cyril first thought of the two young dwarves. They obviously wouldn't speak up for him. As for Dicus, given his attitude just now, it was even more impossible. He thought for a while, but couldn't find anyone he could ask for help from. There's news that Master Rome has recently forged a cleaver, and he gave it to the owner of Mama's. After Master Rome came to Chaos City, he had already dined at Mama's twice. If you can ask the owner of Mama's to speak up for you, there might be a chance, George said. The owner of Mama's. Cyril looked as if he had swallowed a fly. He naturally remembered this person. They'd had conflicts at both of the Chamber of Commerce's ceremonies, and this guy was completely on Gloria's side. Asking him to speak up for him now was like asking a mouse to ask a cat for help. But who was this guy? How could he ask Master Rome to forge a cleaver for a weapon that even 10th-tier powerhouses couldn't get their hands on? A cleaver. I know you don't get along well with him. What to do is up to you, Geoffrey said calmly. I won't let my family die with you because of a fool. Yes. Cyril left with a pale face. Compared to losing his head, being humiliated by that fellow was nothing. As long as this matter could be resolved, he was still the second young master of family Moreton. Prepare the carriage. We're going to Mama's. Harris held his chin as he looked at the Rome, who was eating the steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers, and mumbled, how puzzling. Old Rome, you actually came to Chaos City too. The Rome spat out a mouthful of the smooth brain matter in the bone, and asked, isn't the fish head delicious? No. Just for this fish head. You moved your workshop all the way to Chaos City. Harris was still in disbelief. If I could eat it in Isen Castle, I wouldn't have moved. The Rome nodded. He glanced at Harris and said, didn't you say you like to wander, and don't like to stay in one place for too long? Why are you staying here now? Because the fish head is really delicious. Harris sighed. The Rome smiled. 30 to 50 years ago, when Harris was in Isen Castle, he often came to the blacksmith's workshop to look for him. Unlike those fellows who came to ask for weapons, he would bring a big box of food every time he came. After persisting for many years, he couldn't reject him in the end, so he forged a cleaver for him. The two of them had a pretty good relationship, and could be considered one of his few friends. Also, didn't you say you wouldn't forge cleavers for anyone else in this lifetime? Why did you make one for Mr. Mac too? I exchanged it with the fish head. The roam put down the cleaned fish bones, and sighed. I couldn't reject him. Chapter 1656. Do any of you know the owner of Mamie's? Cyril had gathered a group of friends at the tea house. Seeing that almost everyone had arrived, he asked with a serious expression. The owner of Mamie's? That guy who ruined your plans time and time again. Why, are you finally going to teach him a lesson? A young man in a golden robe laughed. I heard that the owner of this restaurant earns a lot. His dishes are sold at sky-high prices, and the customers line up every day. He earns hundreds of thousands a day. Another person echoed with a hint of envy. Isn't it just a small restaurant? How dare he provoke our young master Cyril? Why don't we go to the restaurant and have a chat? We're not good at anything, but we're good at finding trouble. No matter how good the business is, we can still ruin it. A man with a bit of a ruffian smiled and looked at Cyril with a fawning look. Everyone knew about the conflict between Cyril and Gloria, and the owner of Mamie's seemed to be on Gloria's side. Cyril had mentioned his name a few times. Today, Cyril called everyone over and asked about the owner of Mamie's. Could it be that he was planning to make a move on him? I'm not looking for trouble with him today. I have something I need his help with. Cyril frowned. Ask him for help. Everyone was a little surprised. Cyril actually wanted to ask the owner of a restaurant for help. Moreover, it was a guy who had always been on the opposite side of him. I have something I need his help with. Are any of you familiar with him? Cyril nodded. Ever since I heard that you didn't get along with him, I haven't been to his restaurant. I don't even know what the owner looks like. I haven't been there either. Everyone shook their heads. None of you know him. Cyril frowned. It seemed that he couldn't rely on this group of fair-weather friends. Isn't your niece on good terms with him? Someone reminded him. Everyone glared at him. This guy really touched the pot that didn't boil. Cyril had been upset because of Gloria recently, and this guy actually wanted him to look for her. Cyril fell into deep thought. Although it was embarrassing to ask Gloria for help, and he might not be able to get her help, she was the only person he could find at the moment. With his life at stake, dignity wasn't worth mentioning. Go ahead and enjoy your drinks. I have something to attend to, so I'll be taking my leave now. Cyril quickly strode toward the door, leaving everyone staring at one another in bewilderment. Cyril isn't really going to ask Gloria for help, is he? Someone whispered. Mars is. I met an acquaintance on my way back, and he saw it with his own eyes. I'm afraid Cyril has gotten himself into a lot of trouble this time. Mars nodded. He looked at Gloria and said, but this is actually a good thing for you, young mistress. Even if the matter is settled, Master's side should be more on your side. Gloria shook her head with a worried expression and said, we're in big trouble, and we shouldn't be so calculative about personal gains and losses. If what you said is true, and Master Ram's followers might vent their anger on the Moreton family because of Cyril, then this isn't just Cyril's problem alone. It concerns the safety of hundreds of people in the Moreton family. I'm ashamed that young mistress can still think about the family at this time. Mars looked at Gloria with admiration and then smilingly said, however, family Moreton has been in Chaos City for decades. They're not the four major families for nothing. The City Lord's castle and the Grey Temple won't sit back and watch them do anything to family Moreton. You don't have to worry too much. Gloria nodded thoughtfully. Her influence on family Moreton was not comprehensive enough. She said, but the Marquis family, that's Bowen and his son's doing. They got into trouble with the city lord's castle and the Grey Temple. Bennett's matter is enough to make the Marquis family suffer. Mars shook his head. However, the father and son don't deserve to die. They will be released sooner or later. It's just that the Marquis family won't be able to return to their former glory. We have to abide by the rules in Chaos City. Gloria nodded. Boss, there's someone outside who claims to be your uncle, the guard said to Gloria respectfully as he strode over. Uncle? Gloria frowned, and doubtfully asked, could it be Cyril? Gloria pondered for a while, and said to the guard, bring him to the guest hall. Yes. The guard acknowledged and left. Could it be because of Master Rome's matter? But I don't know that Master, Gloria said doubtfully after the guard left. He's most likely here to ask you for a favor. Listen to what he has to say. No matter what he says, don't agree to it in person. Mars was also a little surprised by Cyril's arrival. All right. Gloria nodded. She really couldn't guess Cyril's motive for looking for her at this time. Cyril followed the guard into the factory. He looked at the row upon row of factories, and felt a little uncomfortable. He had just gone to the factory before Suede, and more than half of the workers there had moved to the new factory. Gloria was also at the new factory, so he came here again. In just a few short months, Gloria had already upgraded to a second factory. She had spent money to buy a large piece of land in the northern part of the city. The factory was quite large, and it was more than 10 times larger than his blacksmith shop. He wasn't sure about the current turnover of Suede, but from the feedback from his subordinates, Suede had already made a name for itself in Chaos City. The high prices didn't stop the women's enthusiasm at all, and they were often out of stock. They were known as the Mamies of the clothing industry. Many of the high-end custom-made orders that originally belonged to famous tailors had now been transferred to Suede. The factory was working day and night, but still couldn't meet the demand. However, Gloria was now taking over the entire textile industry of family Moreton, from the cotton farm to the fabric sales channels all over the Norland continent. Years of accumulated problems, lengthy sales chains, and products that were gradually losing competitiveness had turned this industry, which used to be the backbone of family Moreton, into a leech that clung to the entire family. Geoffrey had tried to change this industry, but it ended in failure. There were too many people from family Moreton in this industry, and the old people who had followed him in his business. The problem was very complicated, and there was almost no way to solve it. Gloria was just a little girl who had just turned 18. What ability did she have to revive this industry that Geoffrey was about to abolish? It's impossible. It doesn't exist. Cyril thought to himself. He tried to calm himself down, and took a deep breath to calm down. He began to think about how to ask for Gloria's help when he met her later. Bookhouse reading website. Chapter 1657. Uncle Cyril, what a rare guest. Gloria sat at the head of the table and looked at Cyril with a smile. Please sit here. Cyril's eyelids twitched when he saw that Gloria didn't get up to greet him. He then looked at Mars behind her and a haze flashed across his eyes. However, he quickly put on a smile and nodded. I heard that you recently moved to a new factory. As your uncle, of course I have to come and take a look. Thank you, uncle. Gloria nodded slightly. She looked at Cyril and didn't say anything else. Cyril was still waiting for Gloria to ask him why he was here. He was just about to tell her that he wanted her to introduce him to Mamie Restaurant's boss and ask him for help, but the atmosphere suddenly froze in an awkward manner. After a moment of silence, Cyril saw that Gloria didn't even intend to serve him tea. However, he couldn't just leave in a huff. He could only smile awkwardly and say, actually, I came here today to ask for your help. With Uncle Cyril's ability, is there anything else that you need my help with? Gloria asked with a smile. This. Cyril wanted to find a hole to hide in. There was no possibility of reconciliation between him and Gloria when it came to the inheritance. Asking for her help was the same as asking for a slap in his face. If he was in Gloria's shoes, he wouldn't just stand by and watch. It would be good enough if he didn't step in and kick her when she was down. This lass has become shrewd. She's not so easy to fool. Cyril looked at the unmoved Gloria. He rolled his eyes and slid down from the chair. He sat on the ground and said with a sorrowful face, "Gloria, you have to help me. My mouth was mean today and offended Master Rome. If I don't get his forgiveness before sunset today, people will line up to kill me. Not only me, but the whole family Moritan will be implicated." "Oh, it seems that Uncle has done something big today." Gloria nodded slightly. Her expression was as calm as an ancient well. She wasn't surprised by Cyril's words and behavior. In the past decade or so, Cyril and his family had played many tricks on her family. The fact that she hadn't kicked them while they were down was already a sign of consideration for them living under the same roof. But now, Cyril was shamelessly begging her. Mars nodded slightly when he saw this scene. He had seen Miss Gloria's improvement in the past few months with his own eyes. She had grown from an innocent girl to a mature businesswoman who didn't like to show her face. Her speed was so fast that it surprised him. This fellow is really heartless. Cyril's eyes darkened. He continued to play the victim. "Gloria, you might not know who that Master Rome is. Master Rome is the most famous legendary blacksmith on the Norland continent. Alex's Tian-Du sword was made by him. Other than that, he has also forged countless divine weapons. He is known as the #1 blacksmith in Isen Castle. There are dozens of powerhouses lining up to ask for a weapon made by him." Gloria interrupted Cyril's words. She looked at him with surprise, and said, "I'm very surprised that you don't know who he is, Uncle, and even dared to offend him." Cyril didn't know what to say. This guy knew everything, yet he acted as if it didn't matter to him. It was clear that he wanted to see him make a fool of himself, and the mockery in his voice made him feel as if his cheeks were being stung. However, it was almost evening now, and he couldn't find a second person who could plead for him. He could only pin all his hopes on Gloria. It has already happened. It's useless no matter how I explain now. I only hope that you can help me plead with the boss of Mamis. Ask him to help me apologize to Master Rome and ask for his forgiveness." Cyril looked at Gloria with a sincere expression. "I know I've done many things to you in the past, but I really have no choice this time. You don't want to see your uncle get beaten to death, right? Mr. Meg?" A hint of surprise appeared in Gloria's eyes. How did this have anything to do with Mr. Meg again? Mars was also puzzled. The most important thing for Cyril to do now was to get Master Rome's forgiveness before nightfall, but what did this have to do with Mr. Meg? "Yes. I'm afraid only Mr. Meg can help with this matter." Cyril quickly nodded, and said, "Master Rome has just arrived in Chaos City. I heard that Mr. Meg is very close to Master Rome. There's no one more suitable than him. As long as he's willing to plead for me, this matter will definitely be over." "So Mr. Meg and Master Rome are old friends?" Gloria was a little surprised, but she didn't show much surprise on her face. After pondering for a moment, she said, "Then you should go to Mr. Meg for this matter." "Why did you come to me?" "You know that I have some conflicts with him in the past. If I go to him directly, I'm afraid I won't even be able to talk to him, let alone ask him for help." Cyril looked at Gloria with an awkward expression, and said, "I know you're very close to him. I hope you can ask him to put in a good word for me in front of Master Rome on account of me being your uncle, and this matter will be over. Mr. Meg and I only have business dealings. Your request will put me in a difficult position. Gloria smiled mockingly as she looked at Cyril, and said, besides, don't you think it's too fake to talk about uncle and niece at a time like this? I've never seen you treat my family so well before just because I'm your niece. This. Cyril's face turned green, and then red. When his father chose his brother as his successor, he didn't let him touch any of the family business. He could only wander around with his friends, and he didn't care about his reputation. Anyway, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't compete with his brother who was better than him in every aspect. His father had already chosen his brother as the successor, and he never looked him in the eye. He hated his brother who easily got his father's approval, so after he got the chance to inherit the family business, he began to ask for what he had been missing for many years. Cyril stood up with the help of a chair, and looked at Gloria, and said, "Tell me, what do you want me to do for you to ask Meg for me? I've already said it very clearly. My relationship with Mr. Meg isn't as close as you think." Gloria still calmly refused. "I don't want to know the relationship between you two. You're a businessman now, so let's talk about business. What do you want from me, and I'll get help from you." Cyril frowned. "You might have forgotten, but I can get what I want without doing anything." Gloria smiled. Bookhouse Reading Website. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.